Chapter 3375. The enemy was not stupid enough to be fooled by him. Of course, Lu Yin wasn't stupid enough to be too passive. If Meng Sang didn't hand over the method to make the springboard, he would rather the springboard be destroyed. He wanted to create a springboard to chase after Meng Sang, and it was even possible for him to charge into the spiritualized universe. Placing the battlefield in the Tianyuan universe was too disadvantageous. He had to plan carefully. If he had to restart a universe from his point of view, it had to be a spiritualized universe. Also, the small spiritual universe was a huge problem. If he allowed Yu Sangtian to restart the small spiritual universe and step into the eternal life realm, it would also be a disaster for them. They had been forced to the edge of the cliff. Many times they had no choice but to make a choice and risk their lives. What? You don't believe me? Meng Sang stared into Lu Yin's eyes. Are you going to the spiritualized universe? Why do you say that? I'm going to use this springboard to leave. I'm going to keep creating springboards along the way, but you didn't ask me if I'm going to destroy the springboards along the way. If I destroy them, will the spiritualized universe notice? You also didn't ask if the spiritualized universe will notice if I create more springboards. You don't care about that anymore. In fact, your goal from the very beginning was to find out how to create springboards, Meng Sang said. You want to go to our spiritualized universe and take the initiative. Lu Yin's eyes flashed. This was indeed his goal. The best outcome of using Meng Sang as a springboard was that once the springboard was completed, he would be able to kill Meng Sang. Killing two birds with one stone. However, he had to consider the possibility that Meng Sang might be able to leave the Tianyuan cosmos alive. If he did, then he would have to build springboards along the way, and in order to prevent Lu Yin and the others from catching up to him, he would definitely destroy those springboards. If they had to let Meng Sang leave alive, those questions were meaningless. They couldn't control Meng Sang. Since that was the case, he could only take the initiative and spiritualize the universe to shift the battlefield. If the Tianyuan universe could be restarted, it might not be impossible for spiritualized universes. They had developed for such a long time. This was a risky move that Lu Yin had discussed with Wang Wen, Mr. Mu and Patriarch Lu Yuan. If he went to the spiritualized universe, he would not be able to conceal himself like when he went to the top realm in the Six Directions Guild. His presence, which did not belong to the spiritualized universe, would be easily exposed. Yu Sangtian's strength was at least on par with the primogenitors. This risky move had only been brought out for now. As for how it would be carried out, it still needed to be discussed. The prerequisite was to obtain the manufacturing method of the springboard. As for Meng Sang, her life depended on her luck. It would be best if he could catch up to him and kill him. If he couldn't, then he would fight to the death in the spiritualized universe. In the distance, the constellation of the springboard was stabilizing. If you attack me, the springboard will also be destroyed, Meng Sang threatened. Lu Yin shrugged. I know. Don't worry, I won't go back on my word. You can leave now, but leave me the method to create the springboard. Meng Sang stared at Lu Yin. You really want to go to the spiritualized universe? That's courting death. I'm courting death. Isn't that what your spiritualized universe wants? We can work together. Lu Yin was surprised. Cooperate? Meng Sang said in a low voice. Yu Sangtian deceived everyone and monopolized the spiritual universe. He wanted to step into the eternal life realm. Before he succeeded, he was still Yu Sangtian. The rest of Yu Sangtian could be controlled. This was also why Yuan Qi was not killed but exiled to the Tianyuan universe. Yu Sangtian could not dominate the spiritualized universe, but if he stepped into the eternal life realm, things would be different. If you go to the spiritualized universe, I'll work with you to deal with Yu Sangtian. Lu Yin laughed. You want to use me to move? Yu Sangtian's attention will be diverted to the small spiritual universe by himself? Meng Sang said bluntly, yes, I want to use you. The same scene happened again. Back then, Lu Yin had said that he wanted to use Meng Sang, and now Meng Sang said that she wanted to use Lu Yin. If Lu Yin really went to the spiritualized universe, he would have to cooperate with Meng Sang in order to stop Yu Sangtian from reactivating the spiritual universe. It would depend on whose methods were better. Lu Yin wanted to stop Yu Sangtian and Meng Sang from stepping into the eternal life realm, and Meng Sang wanted to use Lu Yin to deal with Yu Sangtian while he stepped into the eternal life realm. Whoever succeeded would dominate the three universes. Lu Yin looked at the springboard and the same thing happened again. Neither of them had taken advantage of the springboard, but the spiritual universe's plan could not fail. Meng Sang had another reason for saying this, which was to prevent Lu Yin from catching up to him before he reached the spiritualized universe. He had to leave the method to create the springboard. If he left the Tianyuan universe, Lu Yin would definitely create the springboard or chase after him. He would not reach the maximum distance of the springboard every time. If he fell halfway, Lu Yin would not be able to catch up to him. But this way he would take longer to reach the spiritualized universe. In the end, no one knew who would reach the spiritualized universe first. If Lu Yin caught up to him, he would be easily surrounded and killed without any bargaining chips. He had said this to show his value. When going to a completely unfamiliar universe, it was better to cooperate with someone familiar than to fight alone. Everyone understood this principle and everyone was looking for a way to survive. Even Sang Tian, who stood at the top of the universe, was no exception. Meng Sang gave Lu Yin the method to create the springboard in a way that both of them felt at ease. He also stood on the springboard. As the springboard bounced up, Meng Sang disappeared. The Tianyuan universe, the consciousness universe and the spiritualized universe. We have been passive from the beginning, so going to the spiritualized universe is imperative. We also need to understand the consciousness universe, Mr. Mu said. Lu Yin looked outside the stone door. It's not easy to use a springboard in the spiritualized universe, and it's even more impossible for Meng Sang. He needs 60 years to return to the spiritualized universe, so we have to create the springboard as soon as possible. Otherwise, when he returns to the spiritualized universe will understand our situation. He did not expect Meng Sang's springboard to be used. Regardless of whether or not he could find the springboard, Meng Sang would definitely destroy it in order to not be caught. There was no need to ask. Lu Yin could only count on himself. I'll create the springboard. It's not complicated, and since this springboard hasn't been destroyed, we'll create it in the direction of the springboard's greatest distance, Mr. Mu said. Lu Yin hesitated. If Mr. Mu created the springboard, it would mean leaving the Tianyuan universe. To be honest, Lu Yin was somewhat uneasy about Mr. Mu's departure. He was most worried about the one true God. It was hard to say how long the Grand Empyrean's 6 paths of reincarnation realm could last. The worst-case scenario was that the 6 paths of reincarnation realm had already lost its effects. The one true God did not want to help the spiritualized universe, so he pretended to be trapped. Tianxi, Baoqi and the president had all been betrayed by him, and he had his reasons. With Mr. Mu gone and the progenitor suppressing the sequence's string, it would not be easy for the Tianyuan universe to find an expert who could deal with the one true God. Lu Yin knew that he was still not a match for the one true God. Lu Yin voiced his worries. Mr. Mu fell silent. The one true God was not stupid, and he had his own reasons for every step he took. Although the Eternals had been destroyed, it was actually not Lu Yin's work alone. Since the era of the above heaven, the progenitor, Mr. Mu, the 3 realms, the 6 paths and the 9 mountains and 8 seas had all worked together to succeed. Lu Yin had only been the catalyst for the destruction of the Eternals. If the one true God was left alone, no one knew what he would do. The spiritualized universe did not want its own people to restart it, so the one true God naturally did not want the spiritualized universe to restart the Tianyuan universe with him. His goal had always been to restart the Tianyuan universe. In the end, Lu Yin found Chu Yi and asked him to create a springboard. Only a primordial realm powerhouse could create a springboard, and Lu Yuan was not suitable. He would have no advantage against Meng Sang, but Chu Yi was different. The Tao of Tianyi could at least prevent Chu Yi from being killed by Meng Sang. Not long after, Chu Yi stood on the springboard. As the stars bounced up, the surrounding universe shook and Chu Yi disappeared. He'll reach the maximum distance this springboard can travel in a year. I hope he doesn't run into Meng Sang, Mr. Mu sighed. Meng Sang was worried that Lu Yin would send people to surround and kill Chu Yi. But there were not many experts in the Tianyuan universe who could surround and kill a powerhouse who had just crossed the bitter calamity. If nothing goes wrong, I'll be heading to the spiritualized universe in 40 years at most, Lu Yin murmured. Mr. Mu looked at Lu Yin. You won't be able to hide your aura when you go to the spiritualized universe. The entire spiritualized universe is your enemy. You Sang Tian, and even that Grandmaster Qing Chao, I'll accompany you. Lu Yin did not refuse. This was a war between universes. Unless he reached the eternal realm, he would be too weak to fight alone. Lu Yin had not decided whether he should shift the war to the spiritualized universe or send a few people to the spiritualized universe. However, he had to go. He had found the path of the sequence laws, and the Tianyuan universe could not be realized. Only the spiritualized universe's sequence foundation could. He wanted to go to the spiritualized universe to seize the sequence foundation, and the Gate of Techniques was his greatest goal. Before that, he had to deal with the one true God and the insectoid hive. Otherwise, he would not be able to bring Mr. Mu and the others even if he wanted to. When he returned to the above heaven, he received a few pieces of good news. Over the past half a year, Lu Yin and Mr. Mu had been keeping an eye on Meng Sang. They did not dare to be careless in order to prevent Meng Sang from escaping. No one in the outside world dared to disturb them either. As a result, they did not receive any good news. First, Wu Tian had broken through to the primordial realm. Lu Yin was overjoyed by this news. The more primordial realm experts there were in the Tianyuan universe, the more at ease he felt. The three realms' 6 Daoist primordial realm experts were definitely no weaker than those who had crossed the bitter calamity. The three realms' 6 Daoist could defeat the Star Toad even if he did not break through to the primordial realm. As for the spiritualized universe's Sang Tian, if it were not for his sequence foundation, his strength would be on par with the three realms' 6 Daoist at most. Wu Tian's breakthrough to the primordial realm was enough for the Tianyuan universe to celebrate. Next, the 5 spirit clans also received good news. They had discovered many materials suitable for mecha production in a parallel universe. The Limitless Empire's mechas had been severely damaged in several battles, especially the battle at the border of the Tianyuan universe. They had lost almost half of their mechas, but their value had been extremely high. If not for the mechas, the ones who died would have been progenitors. Now that they had discovered suitable materials in that parallel universe, Lu Yin immediately gave the order to continue producing mechas. Apart from that, there were also new developments in the research of microarray weapons. Aside from the 108 microarray weapons that could be mass-produced, Gu Yan and Xiao Mingshi had discovered another direction for microarray weapons: timing. The details would have to wait until they went to the 5 spirit clans. Chapter 3376. Before Lu Yin left, he first met the 3 spiritualized universe ancestors that the Star Toad had sent over. The 3 of them were in despair and had been brought to the Celestial sect. The best outcome for them was imprisonment, and the worst was naturally death. People from other universes were not of much value to Lu Yin. They would not be willing to become gods. The example of Windmaster had long existed. Creatures from other universes could not be chosen, and using Enhance to read memories was even more of a failure. There was no way to find a spiritualized universe life form, so how could they be integrated? The war between universes was completely different from the war within universes, so Lu Yin's method had to change. Hiding his aura, disguising himself, using Enhance on his die and so on had all lost their effects. He had to find a new way to adapt to the war between universes. Have you heard of the Royal God Mountain? Looking at the 3, Lu Yin's tone was cold. He kept releasing pressure that made it difficult for them to breathe. Among the 3, the 2 men subconsciously looked at the woman. Lu Yin's gaze fell on the woman. She said, "I'm from the Royal God Mountain." Lu Yin waved his hand and the 2 men were taken away. "Tell me everything you know about the Royal God Mountain," Lu Yin said indifferently. The woman did not refuse. No one wanted to die if they could live. They had cultivated step by step from ordinary people to the progenitor realm and had experienced many hardships. Survival was an instinct. They might not be afraid of death, but they were not willing to die just like that. They would grab hold of any chance of survival. The woman spoke and told him what she knew about the Royal God Mountain. The world of cultivation was fair to everyone. Regardless of whether one had a monstrous background or an ordinary itinerant cultivator, no matter how high or low their starting point was, there would always be life and death waiting for them. Everyone's understanding of the world of cultivation was different. The Royal God Mountain was a world of cultivation. Through the woman's narration, Lu Yin could clearly hear the process of a cultivator rising step by step. It was no different from the 5th continent's 6 Direction Society's cultivators who had cultivated to the progenitor realm. The Royal God Mountain was called a mountain, but from the beginning to the end, it was a starry sky from the woman's mouth. Lu Yin knew that it was the Little Spirit Universe. The woman did not know about the Little Spirit Universe, and the progenitors were still not qualified to know about it. Just like the 4-way scales, Not every progenitor knew about the Six Direction Society, let alone those from the Tian universe. The woman had cultivated to the progenitor realm in the small spirit universe before entering the spiritualized universe. It was similar to how Lu Yin had cultivated to the progenitor realm in the Fifth Mainland before entering the Six Directions Guild and coming into contact with other parallel universes. It was the same process. The only difference was that Lu Yin knew that the parallel universes that he had come into contact with had a collective name, the Tianyuan universe. After the woman walked out of the starry sky, she learned that there was a general term for it, the spiritualized universe. The starry sky where she once cultivated also had a name, Divine Reigning Mountain. This was the Imperial God Mountain. Countless people in the spiritualized universe knew that God-governing mountain was a starry sky. It was similar to the 3,000 Great Worlds or the starry sky of the tree starry sky, where many families hid in lakes. This starry sky was hidden in a mountain, and that mountain was also called God-governing mountain. The Imperial God Mountain was a star hidden inside a mountain. It was a real mountain that belonged to the Imperial God Mountain. The moment the woman walked out of the starry sky, she saw Xianxia and learned about the spiritualized universe. Their cultivation was exactly the same as the spiritualized universes, so it was easy for the spiritualized universe to accept them. Arrival Lu Yin was most concerned about the method of concealing his aura. Meng Sang was in a hurry to return to the spiritualized universe because he could tell that someone had come from the small spirit universe. Yuan Qi had not tried to do so, as he had been locked up in the above heaven sect before the battle and had not been able to meet anyone from the spiritualized universe. Otherwise, he would have told Meng Sang how to do so, and she would have definitely tried some methods to do so. Yuan Qi had guessed that there was only one way to hide from the powerhouses of the spiritualized universe, especially if even Xianxia could not detect it: a spirit seed. The cultivation of the people in the small spirit universe was exactly the same as that of the spiritualized universe. They all came from the same cultivation model of the spiritualized universe. Only the spirit seeds that had been cultivating since they were young and had their auras hidden could not be detected by the people in the spiritualized universe after they left the small spirit universe. Every progenitor from the small spirit universe had come into contact with Xianxia, which was not normal. Given Xianxia's level, those who had not reached the level of a sequence law would not be qualified to meet him. However, the woman met Xianxia and obtained the cultivation method he imparted to her. The technique did not have a name, or at least Xianxia had not given it a name. Many people from the Royal God Mountain called it the Heavenly Spiritualization Technique, as no one outside of the Royal God Mountain had obtained this technique from Xianxia. The Heavenly Spiritualization Technique had a very simple use, which was to adapt to the spiritualized universe. There was not much else to it. However, that was because these people did not notice its use. Xianxia had modified the spirit seeds that they had come into contact with since the beginning of their cultivation. In order to prevent the powerhouses of the spiritualized universe from detecting that they had come from another universe, they had to use the Heavenly Spiritualization Technique. This was also why everyone from the Royal God Mountain had to cultivate the Heavenly Spiritualization Technique. This technique was very easy to cultivate and it could be mastered in a very short time. The people from the Royal God Mountain did not know that this technique combined with the spirit seeds would allow them to conceal their auras that did not belong to the spiritualized universe. The spiritualized universe itself would not be able to guess that they had come from another universe. Only those who knew about the existence of the small spirit universe could see Xianxia's plan. So what if he knew the technique? He could not practice it. This was a technique that was unique to the spiritualized universe. If one wanted to remain undetected in the spiritualized universe, they had to first cultivate a spirit seed and obtain the Heavenly Spiritualization Technique from a woman. Otherwise, they had to be like their ancestor and obtain a body as a consciousness life form. Lu Yin could not do either. The woman was also taken away and imprisoned. Lu Yin instructed the Yao Emperor and Imperial Tutor Skyminder to come to the above sky sect while he went to the 5 spirit tribes. He found Gu Yan and the others. Gu Yan was delighted when he saw Lu Yin. I wanted to simplify the creation of the 108 microarrays, but I didn't expect to come up with something like this. What's going on? Tell me. Lu Yin was curious. Gu Yan pointed at a microarray weapon embedded in a suit of armor. See what's different about it. Lu Yin looked over. With his current strength he could see the difference at a glance. He had already reached the level of an origin heavenly master, and he was the best lockbreaker in the entire Tianyuan universe. Of course, when it came to sourcebox arrays, he still could not compare to Zhou Xian and the others. They had studied them for far too long, and Lu Yin had only relied on Qiuling's experience to reach the level of an origin heavenly master. His powerful cultivation allowed him to surpass everyone else in lockbreaking. Cultivation was important in lockbreaking, but the same could not be said for sourcebox arrays. So that's how it is. Changing a sourcebox's danger can turn this microarray weapon into a lock-breaking sourcebox and completely explode. Lu Yin's eyes shone brightly. Zhou Xian smiled. It's a very simple principle. I've always been thinking of manipulating it, but I never thought of this. If I had thought of it earlier, I would have been able to create it long ago. How did you think of it now? Lu Yin was puzzled. Zhou Xian sighed. You should have gone to the spiritualized universe, right? Lu Yin raised his brows. Senior, you guessed it? Zhou Xian replied, it's not just me. Many people have guessed it as well. In the current war, not going to the spiritualized universe and being attacked forever is not in your character. You can't bring many people with you to the spiritualized universe, so we've been thinking of ways to help you. This kind of sourcebox array can explode at a fixed time. Its power is equivalent to that of a progenitor, so it should be able to help you. Zhou Xian and the others did not know that Lu Yin needed the sequence foundation to fill the void in his heart, nor did they know that Xianxia wanted to restart the tiny spiritual universe and step into the eternal realm. They had only guessed that Lu Yin wanted to go to the spiritualized universe based on their most basic understanding of this war. Knowing one's enemy was the most basic requirement for pursuing victory. How could one win without understanding the spiritualized universe? Even if many people from the spiritualized universe had been captured, it was impossible to fully understand it through them. Besides, there was still the consciousness universe nearby. It's just that the consumption is too great, Lu Yin said. Ordinary 108 microarray weapons were embedded in the armor to create the Tianyuan army. With the materials that the Tianyuan universe had found, only 3,000 Tianyuan soldiers could be created. If some of the materials were used to create these microarray weapons, the Tianyuan army's numbers would definitely decrease. Furthermore, these microarray weapons could only be used once. Even so, Lu Yin discussed it with Zhou Xian and the others. In the end, they still had to produce them, and the quantity could not be too small. Of course, there was no need for too many, as there was no point in having too many. 500 was about enough. This meant that Lu Yin would have the destructive power of a progenitor 500 times over, and he could use them at a fixed time. When the time came, he would definitely be able to give the spiritualized universe a pleasant surprise. After leaving the 5 spirit clans, Lu Yin took out Mount Supreme and released Furball and Green Immortal. This fellow could not leave his side as he pleased, so Lu Yin could only bring it along. The moment he released it, Lu Yin was able to merge into its body and check its memories as well as sense its surroundings. He still could not sense the existence of the Hive and Green Immortal as they were too far away. This fellow was now a detector that allowed Lu Yin to search for the Hive. Without waiting for Furball and Green Immortal to speak, Lu Yin put it away and released it once in a while. Perhaps if he was lucky, it would be able to sense the Hive's existence. When he returned to the Above Heavens sect, the Yao Emperor and Imperial Tutor Skyminder had already arrived and were waiting respectfully. Lu Yin brought them to the Day-Night clan's territory and entered the ruins of the Frigid Immortal sect. They passed through the Frigid Immortal Pond and arrived at the underground, where the Frigid Immortal sect's hidden treasures had once been. Lu Yin, Bai Shui and Senior Qingping had come here before, and it was Senior Qingping who had discovered the seal left behind by Ancestor Hui. When he looked at the seal again, Lu Yin's gaze became complicated. Ancestor Hui had schemed against history, and in the end he had schemed against the Eternals, allowing the humans to achieve a great victory. If not for Ancestor Hui, the current human situation would not have been the same. Although Ancestor Hui did not possess the greatest strength of all time, his wisdom was unparalleled. Lu Yin looked at Ancestor Hui's symbol, and his gaze pierced through it until he saw the human-shaped source boxes beneath the seal. Ancestor Hui had sealed these human-shaped source boxes in order to prevent the desolate god from being reborn. Chapter 3377. Ever since the Above the Sky sect had been re-established, Lu Yin had ordered people to search for human-shaped source boxes. Now he had collected all the ones in the outside world, and only Progenitor Hui's seal remained unopened. It was time for the desolate god to be reborn. The reason why Lu Yin had not allowed it to be reborn was because he was afraid that no one would be able to control it. Now he could suppress the desolate god by himself, not to mention Lu Yuan Wu Tian, and the others who had broken through to the primordial realm. There was also Mr. Mu and the colossal giant ancestor. A single desolate god could not overturn the heavens. Lu Yin wanted to find the death god's body, as it would be perfect if he could revive it. Madman Lu had said that the death god was invincible back then, and even the sole true god could not do anything to him. This was because the death god was the first to break through to the primordial realm, and he possessed the power to kill. If the death god was still alive, he might be able to rival a primogenitor. Progenitor Hui's seal was too weak for Lu Yin, and he could easily remove it. The group of source boxes were taken away. Behind them, the Yao Emperor and Imperial Tutor Skymender exchanged glances. The desolate god was finally reborn. The desolate god was the ruler of all the astral beasts. Without the desolate god, even if Lu Yin did not bully the astral beasts, they would not have the confidence to face the humans. But was this a suitable time for the desolate god to be reborn? What was the point? Once they were reborn, they would look at each other with fear. They had deceived Lu Yin, so how could they explain this? Following this, Lu Yin brought them to the cosmic sea where the army's territory was. The army would always wander around the cosmic sea because they were protecting the source box array left behind by Progenitor Hui. They were soldiers who had once followed Progenitor Hui. I know that you are all protecting the source box array left behind by Progenitor Hui, but there is no need for that anymore. I will protect whatever Progenitor Hui wants to protect, so please step aside. The army was as weak as an ant to Lu Yin, but he respected them just as much as he respected Progenitor Hui. The giant warship approached with lightning and the world turned black. 8,000 soldiers wielded spears and faced Lu Yin. Unparalleled spears, soldiers who sought death. This was an army. Within the army, a pair of eyes stared at Lu Yin with desire, excitement, and apprehension. He was Huawu, and he had a secret technique that kept his word. He had once joined the army in order to survive, but he had been coerced by Lu Yin into betraying the army and allowing Lu Yin to see the seal that the army was protecting. Out of respect for the core, Lu Yin allowed Huawu to stay behind. Huawu tried to slip away once, but he failed. In the end, he was caught by the core and kept on the ship. Too many things had happened in the outside world. The Hexagon sect, the everlasting race, and even the spiritualized universe. However, this place was peaceful from beginning to end. Huawu's initial fear, anxiety, and now his heart was as calm as still water. At this time, Lu Yin came over again. His thoughts were active once more, and he wanted to leave this ship as far away as possible. Thunder rumbled and the sea darkened as the army faced Lu Yin. Lu Yin looked at them calmly as well. After a while, the warship moved aside, revealing the seal hidden at the bottom of the sea. Lu Yin looked at the seal and then casually waved his hand to destroy it. He then collected all of the human-shaped source boxes. As for the army, he looked deeply at the warship. Ancestor Hui died in battle for humanity. If everyone is willing, you can head to the 5th pagoda to protect it. Ancestor Hui also wanted to protect that place. After he finished speaking, he turned to leave. Huawu could not take it anymore. Master Lu, wait a moment. Lu Yin turned back and saw Huawu. He laughed. You're still here? Here. Huawu carefully avoided the soldiers around him and charged at Lu Yin, shouting, Master Lu, take me away. I can't take it anymore. Take me away. Every day here is like hell. Lu Yin raised a brow. When we first arrived, I saw that your heart was as calm as still water. Why do you want to leave? Huawu wailed, I'm just numb. Master Lu, please take me away. I want to leave. Lu Yin shook his head. There's no need. Huawu despaired and he slowly collapsed to the ground. He thought that Lu Yin would keep him in the core. Is my beautiful life gone just like that? I still want to go out and explore. Right? He hurriedly looked at Lu Yin. I want to fight for humanity. How are the everlasting race? I heard that the Hexagon sect has appeared again. Master Lu, I want to fight to the death for humanity. I have a secret technique and I'm a man of my word. Master Lu, you have to believe me. Lu Yin pointed behind Huawu. Huawu turned around and saw that the 8,000 soldiers had already returned to their cabins and were ignoring him. He was stunned. What do you mean? You can stay, but you can also leave. Their mission is over, Lu Yin said before vanishing. Hua Wu wanted to say something to Lu Yin, but Lu Yin had already disappeared. His jaw dropped and he looked back to make sure that the soldiers had not caught him. He jumped into the sea and was so excited that he wanted to scream. Run, run. Don't let those guys see you. Run as far as you can and never come back to the cosmic sea again. His days of despair were finally over. Hua Wu have escaped. On the other side, Lu Yin brought the Yao the Arch and Imperial Tudor Skymender to the Royal Frost Continent. Looking at the familiar 5 rings of ice snow, Lu Yin could not remember the last time he was here. It had been a long time. When Lu Yin arrived, the Ice the Arch hurriedly led everyone from the Royal Frost Continent to welcome him. Greetings, Master Lu. Greetings, Master Lu. Che Han was excited. He was one of Lu Yin's earliest subordinates, and he had helped Lu Yin rise in the early days, even though his goal was to find foreign aid for the Royal Frost Continent. Lu Yin's gaze swept past the Ice Empress Che Han and the others before sweeping past the Humble Corps. There were nearly 100 Humble Corps members on the Royal Frost Continent, and they were all in lighters on average. When Lu Yin had first formed the Aerial Corps, he had wanted to take in the Humble Corps as well, but after some thought he had decided against it. Without the Humble Corps, the Royal Frost Continent would not feel safe. Furthermore, Lu Yin had been worried that someone would break Progenitor Hui's seal, so he had left the Humble Corps behind. Now the Humble Corps was no longer important to him. Forget about Enlighters, even envoys and half-progenitors were not worthy of his attention. He had the mechas under his command and the Tianyuan army, which had the destructive power of a progenitor. Once upon a time progenitors had not been seen, and the strongest had been half-progenitors and there had only been a few. Now there were too many progenitors and it was all because Lu Yin had increased the limits of the Tianyuan universe. There's nothing else. You can go back, Lu Yin said. The Ice Empress bowed respectfully but she did not move. She wanted to wait for Lu Yin to leave first. Lu Yin said, "My duties on the Royal Frost Continent are cancelled." The Ice Empress, Che Han and the others looked up at Lu Yin in shock, not understanding what he meant. "There's a seal left behind by Progenitor Hui here and I'll remove it today. From now on you don't have to protect it anymore." Lu Yin waved his hand and the Royal Frost Continent trembled. The Ice Empress wanted to say something but she did not know what to say. The seal here was the Royal Frost Continent's mission, but did the current Fifth Mainland really need them? What level was Lu Yin at? He had cared about this seal, feared it and protected it. But now he no longer needed it. The Ice Empress had a complicated expression. Now that they had lost their mission, she did not know where the Royal Frost Continent's future lay. The mission of protecting the seal had trapped them, but it had also given them a reason to continue living. From now on they were free. The Fifth Mainland had a total of 3 Progenitor Hui's seals, and all of them had been broken. The human-shaped source boxes had all been gathered. Lu Yin brought all of the human-shaped source boxes, the Yao Emperor and Imperial Tudor Skymender to the Astral Beast domain. He wanted to revive the Desolate God there. Aside from them, Wu Tian, Lu Yuan, Hongyan Mavis and Jialan Zhulaw had all gone as well. However, they did not go together and instead hid in the shadows. The revival of the Desolate God was a big deal and it was also a matter between the two of them. The biggest difference between the Astral Beast domain and the human domain was that the Astral Beast domain was filled with savagery. When the Sixth Mainland had invaded the Astral Beast domain, they had not been able to find anything besides some ores and other natural resources. The Astral Beast domain had not developed as quickly as the human domain, but this was the Astral Beast domain. Back then, Imperial Tudor Skymender and the others had concealed the revival of the Desolate God. They had explained that the human-shaped source boxes were afraid of death and had used the Source Stone technique to transform themselves into source boxes. The only way to unlock them was through the inverse origin array. Not only could the source boxes be unlocked but it could also be used to control them. When Lu Yin had first heard of this, he had believed Imperial Tudor Skymender's explanation. However, after Ghost Monkey had obtained Progenitor Wushang's memories, he had overturned Imperial Tudor Skymender's words and told Lu Yin the truth. The Desolate God had injected the savage scripture into the Source Stone technique, and what had been unlocked was not a person, but an astral beast that had transformed itself into a human-shaped astral beast. These astral beasts controlled the Desolate God's split body, and once they were revived they could revive the Desolate God. Imperial Tutor Skymander's heart sank as he looked at the densely packed human-shaped source boxes. If this had happened a few decades ago, this would have been his dream come true. Lu Yin had already set up the inverse origin array, and all that was left was for Imperial Tutor Skymander to unlock it. But now what was the point of unlocking it? What would happen if a desolate god appeared? With the Heaven's Path's current strength, they could even suppress 2 or 3 desolate gods, let alone one. More importantly, once a desolate god appeared, Imperial Tutor Skymander would know that he had lied to Lu Yin. When he thought of this, Imperial Tutor Skymander subconsciously glanced at the Yao Emperor. The Yao Emperor was just as nervous, and there was even a hint of fear in his eyes. They had been fearful all this time. Lu Yin's gaze was calm. Let's begin, Lockbreaker. I urgently need a group of experts to replenish the Tianyuan army. Imperial Tutor Skymander closed his eyes and faced Lu Yin before slowly kneeling down. When the Yao Emperor saw this, he hurriedly knelt down as well, not daring to raise his head. Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back. What are you doing? Imperial Tutor Skymander's voice was bleak. Pathmaster, we lied to you. Lu Yin did not say anything and merely looked at him. The human-shaped source boxes, the source stone technique, and the inverse origin formation are all real. However, the ones who have been revived are not those who cultivated the source stone technique, but the astral beasts and the desolate gods, Imperial Tutor Skymander said. Lu Yin's lips curled up. Why didn't you tell me earlier? The Yao Emperor was shocked. Lu Yin had already known. Imperial Tutor Skymander was not surprised. What in the universe could hide from Lu Yin? Lu Yin's cultivation was extremely high, and his strength was rarely seen. It was not an exaggeration to say that he knew everything. Please punish us, Pathmaster. Imperial Tutor Skymander did not say anything else and directly asked for forgiveness. The Yao Emperor hurriedly said, Please punish us, Pathmaster. Let's begin. Reviving the desolate gods? Not bad, Lu Yin said calmly. Chapter 3378. Skymander took a deep breath, stood up and walked towards the group of human-shaped source boxes. As for the Yao Emperor, he was not an origin array heavenly master and could not help Skymander. Without Lu Yin's command, he continued to kneel there, not daring to move. The inverse origin formation was activated. Every source box array was created by an origin array heavenly master's blood, sweat, and tears. No source box array could be easily created, as it represented an origin array heavenly master's blood, sweat, and tears. Even progenitor Hui could not easily create a source box array. Although Lu Yin believed that he was the best lockbreaker in the universe, he did not know much about source box arrays, so he did not interfere. Instead, he watched Skymander use them. The source stone technique and the inverse origin formation both amazed Lu Yin. This was a technique that was compatible with source box arrays, and true insight did not contain it. It was truly mystical. History had never lacked geniuses, and anyone who could create the source stone technique and the inverse origin formation was definitely a genius. Time slowly passed and the inverse origin formation was activated. Many human-shaped source boxes were unlocked, and their outer shells melted at a rate visible to the naked eye. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days. Finally, 10 days passed. With the inverse origin formation activated, all of the human-shaped source boxes' outer shells fell off, and one person after another appeared before Lu Yin and the others. Rise. Skymander Imperial Tutor barked, and the inverse origin formation shot into the sky. It turned into a blinding light that enveloped all of the source boxes that had been unlocked. Almost everyone opened their eyes at the same time, their gazes ferocious and filled with confusion. Some of them unconsciously let out strange cries, which were the cries of astral beasts. Junior Skymander, please revive Lord Desolate God. Some of the people's gazes turned from confusion to clarity. Some tore off their arms, some tore off their legs, and some even twisted their necks. Their necks flew out and changed shape in midair, turning into a familiar statue that Lu Yin had seen before. It was the Desolate God's body. One by one, the dismembered bodies reassembled, and an earth-shattering roar resounded through the heavens. Everyone who had been unlocked knelt down. Welcome, Lord Desolate God. Welcome, Lord Desolate God. Welcome, Lord Desolate God. In the past, the astral beast had been bullied and enslaved by humans. Only when the Desolate God oversaw the Fourth Mainland had they managed to slightly curb this situation. During that era, All the giant astral beasts regarded the origami as their guardians. Only the origami could protect them. In their hearts, the desolate god was truly a god. For the sake of the desolate god, they would do anything. This attitude was passed down to the generation of the imperial advisor Bu Tian and the generation of the shifter emperor. Back then, Lu Yin had been in control of the astral beast domain's fate. Even so, the imperial tutor had deceived him in order to revive the desolate god. Even after Lu Yin led the above heaven sect to greater heights, imperial tutor Bu Tian did not mention anything about the origami. It was not that he was hoping that the origami would be able to do anything when it was resurrected in the future. He just did not want the past to repeat itself. Before Lu Yin had appeared, the imperial tutor had hoped to revive the desolate god and lead the astral beasts to the peak to suppress the humans. Later on, Lu Yin's above heaven sect had become invincible, and the imperial tutor did not wish for the desolate god to appear. Otherwise, it would only be suppressed by Lu Yin. This was the protection of his own beliefs. Skymender imperial tutor sighed as he watched the desolate god's body reconstruct itself. There was nothing he could do to stop it. Fortunately, the desolate god was one of the primogenitor's disciples, so it was unlikely that the desolate god would become Lu Yin's enemy. Lord Desolate God, the times have changed. In this era, humans are even stronger. He clenched his fists. He had to inform the desolate god of the situation as soon as it revived. He could not let the desolate god and Lu Yin fight. He absolutely could not let them become enemies. Lu Yin calmly watched as the desolate god revived. A powerful aura swept through the area. This was the aura of a peak sequence law expert. The desolate god was one of the 6 paths of the 3 realms. Lu Yuan and the others must be very excited at this moment. In the surroundings, Lu Yuan, Hongyan Mavis, Wu Tian, Zhaoan Zhiluo, and the others all looked at this scene. Big Yellow was about to return. A roar shook the heavens and the earth. The heavens were distorted and ripples spread out in all directions. A suffocating pressure descended and continued to increase. A familiar figure appeared. Lu Yin finally saw the desolate god. He had fought it during the progenitor's origin tribulation, so he was not unfamiliar with its form. He was especially familiar with its power. Now that he saw it, he felt a sense of familiarity. However, was this increasing pressure trying to announce to this era that it had returned? The desolate god's aura spread throughout the entire astral beast domain, then to the human domain, then to the 5th mainland, and finally to the astral tree domain. Countless people sensed the desolate god's aura. Some felt their hearts tremble while others were confused. This aura was so powerful that it belonged to the 6 paths of the 3 realms. It was definitely a powerhouse, but what did this mean? Although it was powerful, it was releasing its aura in such an unbridled manner. Was this a provocation? No matter how powerful the aura was, it should not be able to suppress the current ancestral masters. It should be known that even a powerhouse who had undergone bitter adversity would not dare to be so unbridled in the starter space. In the astral beast domain, the desolate god's body had completely recovered. It slowly opened its eyes and saw that the people who had been unlocked were actually astral beasts. It then looked forward and saw the imperial tutor, who was so excited that he wanted to say something. The imperial tutor excitedly looked at the desolate god. "My lord, now this impudent. Why is the Yao Emperor's bloodline kneeling to a human?" The desolate god roared, almost causing the imperial tutor to faint. In front of Lu Yin, the Yao Emperor was stunned. Right, it was still kneeling, but that was not the main point. "Lord Desolate God, the desolate god stared at Lu Yin. "Human, who gave you the guts to enslave my race?" Then a terrifying pressure descended upon Lu Yin. Just like the imperial tutor, the Yao Emperor was speechless. He could only stare blankly as the desolate god attacked Lu Yin. The people who had been unlocked below the desolate god all glared at Lu Yin with hatred and killing intent. This human had definitely wanted to stop the inverse origin formation from unlocking it, but he had failed. The desolate god's appearance would be unrivaled in the universe. Even in their era, the desolate god was the 6 paths of the 3 realms. The glory of that era could not be replicated. They did not know how long they had waited to be revived. The desolate god would definitely become the ruler of this era. Secretly, Wu Tian sighed. "Big Yellow has just been revived. It seems like its strength has recovered, but it hasn't. It did not discover us at all, and it can't sense Little Seven's strength either." It was so angry when it saw the Yao Emperor kneeling to Little Seven. Its prejudice against humans is too deep. It can't be blamed. There were no beasts in that era that did not hate humans, but there was a reason why humans enslaved beasts. Are we just going to let it attack little Seven? What else can we do? Can only take a beating. Don't worry, little Seven knows how to control her strength. Master, watch this as well. In the distance, Lu Yin endured the desolate god's powerful pressure without moving an inch. The desolate god's eyes trembled as it sensed that something was wrong. This human did not care about its pressure at all? How was this possible? Even in their era, only the 3 realms and 6 paths of the 3 realms could achieve such a glorious era. But that era should have existed already. Did the Eternals not destroy the overlords? It wanted to kill this person, but when it saw the Yao Emperor kneeling, it could not suppress the anger in its heart. It charged towards Lu Yin and attacked him head-on. Indestructible body. The desolate god had 2 strong points: its indestructible body and its undefeatable weapon. Its physical strength was extremely powerful. If Hongyan Mavis was the strongest human in that era, then even Lu Yuan could not compare to her. The desolate god was the strongest beast. During that era, Hongyan Mavis had challenged it multiple times, but it had rejected her every time. It did not want to compete with Hongyan Mavis in terms of strength. It would be better if it could find a strength beast. His valiant body crashed into Lu Yin. The group of people who had been unlocked were excited as they waited for the scene of Lu Yin being torn apart. Lu Yin looked up, raised his right hand and blocked it single-handedly. Boom. The stars trembled as the power shattered the void. The darkness turned into a beam of light that swept out from the void realm. The Yao Emperor and Skyminder Imperial Tutor were both pushed back by the force of the collision, but they were not injured. The desolate god had avoided them, or else they would have been torn apart. A loud boom accompanied the explosion of the void, causing the surroundings to become blurry. Only the desolate god could see clearly, and it was stunned in disbelief. This human had blocked it with a single hand. How was this possible? Lu Yin stopped the desolate god with a single hand. What an indestructible body. You can revive even after your body is split apart. That's the profundity of the indestructible body. However, your strength still needs to be tempered, and you can't compare to a strength beast. The desolate god was stunned. How was this possible? A human had blocked it with a single hand? Could not even use a red light. Who are you, human? The desolate god's low voice resounded through the heavens. Lu Yin's lips curled up. Above heaven's pathmaster Lu Yin. The desolate god's eyes widened. Impudent. Its body suddenly transformed into a burly man, and a long dagger axe appeared in its hand. It was the undefeatable weapon, the Avicii dagger axe. Space was the shaft and time was the blade. When the dagger axe stabbed out, the void froze, making it difficult to escape. Time was like a ribbon that was frozen by the dagger axe. Lu Yin watched as the dagger axe approached, and he used the reverse step to parallel time. In front of him, the dagger axe moved horizontally, sweeping through the void and causing ripples of time. The sequence particles that it contained shocked Lu Yin. What a tyrannical sequence law. The desolate god's sequence law was called destruction. Everything in the universe had a counter to each other, but the desolate god's destruction could destroy everything. In that era, the desolate god was extremely powerful, and it was confident that it could fight against anyone in the 3 realms and 6 paths. However, it had lost to the Grim Reaper. The Grim Reaper had slaughtered astral beasts and carved fear into their blood, passing it down generation after generation. Perhaps this was the reason why the 4th mainland had been destroyed. A starry sky appeared in Lu Yin's heart, repelling the sequence law, and the desolate god's sequence particles disappeared. The desolate god was stunned. Primordial realm? Lu Yin grabbed the Avicii dagger axe. This was an undefeatable weapon that could freeze time and lock down the void. Lu Yin's control of time and space surpassed the desolate god's. The Avicii dagger axe could not move, and the desolate god immediately let go of it and punched at Lu Yin. Lu Yin reversed the Avicii dagger axe and swept it across at an even faster speed, sending the desolate god flying. The desolate god could not withstand Lu Yin's strength, and it was sent flying. It stood in the sky, panting heavily as it looked at Lu Yin in shock. Chapter 3379. There was no need to continue fighting, as Lu Yin had been holding back all this time. At this moment it wanted to know who this person was and what had happened to this era. This person was clearly very young, but he was able to suppress it in every way, suppressing it to the point that it vomited blood. He did not stop it from reviving. He did not care about it at all. Those who had been unlocked were all stunned. How could this be? Heaven-mending Imperial Advisor sighed. Sure enough, this was the case. In this era, none of the 6 paths of the 3 realms could control the universe. He did not know if the desolate god's emergence was a good thing or a bad thing. The Shifter Emperor felt bitter. The astral beasts would not be able to escape the fate of being suppressed by humans. The same was true for the Aragami. Senior, have you had enough? Lu Yin asked as he casually tossed the Avicii dagger axe to the desolate god. The desolate god took it and gripped the Avicii dagger tightly. Come out. Wu Tian, Lu Yuan, Hongyan Mavis and Sapphire Zhilua walked out. Long time no see, Big Yellow, Lu Yuan said. The Aragami glanced at the few of them. Her gaze was complicated. There was hatred, nostalgia, and an indescribable emotion in her eyes. By resurrection. Were you guys the mastermind? Lu Yuan grinned proudly. Let me formally introduce him. His name is Lu Yin, a descendant of the Lu family. He is also the current sect master of the Above Heaven sect and the master of the Tianyuan universe. Nothing was more shocking than what the Aragami had just heard. The sect above the heavens had been destroyed. Lu Yin's master had suppressed the Echelon's string, the great battle at Immemorial City, the Daoist sect's 9 mountains and 8 seas, the 5th mainland. The sect above the heavens had been re-established, the 6 Directions Society, the spiritualized universe, and so on and so forth. Even the desolate god needed a long time to sort through all of this information. It had been out of touch with the world for far too long, and it had been attacked by Lu Yin as soon as it appeared. Even now, it still hadn't recovered from its shock. It also understood why the Yao Emperor had knelt before Lu Yin and why Butian had hesitated to speak. He really shouldn't have revived. Big Yellow, it's good that you've revived now. The war between the Tianyuan universe and the spiritualized universe is raging like a raging fire. People are dying constantly and we're lacking in experts, said Lu Yuan. The desolate god sneered. What does that have to do with me? Just listen to how much you hate humans. Lu Yuan rolled his eyes. The desolate god gritted her teeth. If it weren't for you, the giant astral beast wouldn't have been enslaved like that. Every era is marked by that era. That kind of thing is bound to happen in that era. Before Master established the sect above the heavens, how many beasts had slaughtered humans? It was Master who said that we should be treated as equals, but the result was like that. If it wasn't for Master's promise, Above Heaven sect wouldn't have been established so easily. You also have complaints about Master. I hate everyone. So you allowed the 4th mainland to be destroyed. The desolate god raised his head and glared at them. That's right. I didn't do anything when the 4th mainland was destroyed. That was what they had guessed. However, the Aragami actually admitted it. It was still hard for everyone to accept it. Hongyan Mavis stared at the Aragami. Between the humans and the Eternals, you chose the Eternals? The Aragami looked at her. Shouldn't I? Humans only think about slaughtering and enslaving astral beasts, but the Eternals don't. They come from you humans. The true goal of eternity is to restart the Tianyuan universe and step into eternal life, said Jialan Jilua. The desolate god's eyes trembled and he fell silent. It did not know about this matter. To be exact, no one in that era knew about this matter because the Tianyuan universe was far from being able to be rebooted in that era. Back then, the Above Heaven sect didn't even know that the Eternals would attack the humans. No one expected the primogenitor to be ambushed or the guardian envoys hiding in the dark. This was the main reason why the Above Heaven sect was defeated. The Eternals were thinking too far ahead. Humans, on the other hand, were immersed in the glory and excitement of thousands of races. This was the so-called decline after the peak of prosperity. Big Yellow, if you knew that the Eternals wanted to restart the Tianyuan universe, would you still let the 4th mainland be destroyed? Wu Tian asked. Everyone looked at the desolate god. The desolate god looked up with a solemn expression and glanced at everyone. He then sneered, nonsense. If the universe was rebooted, we would all die. How could I let it happen? At least you have a conscience, said Hongyan Mavis. The desolate god snorted. I hope that the humans will perish, not everyone will die together. One of the reasons why you hate humans so much is because Chu Haizi slaughtered the astral beasts, right? Wu Tian suddenly said. The desolate god's eyes widened and they were filled with coldness. Where's Chu Haizi? Dead. Lu Yuan sighed. The desolate god was shocked. You are all alive but Chu Haizi is dead? What do you mean? In your eyes we don't deserve to live? Jialan Jiluo was unhappy. The desolate god said, Chu Haizi is stronger than anyone and he can break through to the primordial realm at any time. Once he breaks through, I don't think even Master can do anything to him. How did he die? Lu Yin continued. He died for me. The desolate god only noticed Lu Yin now. Died for you? You were already here at that time? Lu Yin did not know how to explain. Let's not talk about the past. You know the current situation. No matter what side you stand on, you have to join this war between the universes, Lu Yuan said. The desolate god sneered. Not necessarily. I can join the spiritualized universe. Jialan Jiluo raised an eyebrow. What did you say? The desolate god glanced at everyone. Haven't I made it clear enough? You want to betray the Tianyuan universe? The Tianyuan universe already belongs to you humans. So what if you defeat the spiritualized universe? Won't it still be enslaved by you humans? Times have changed. The above heavens sect will not enslave the astral beasts. Lu Yin said, I promise that I will not let anyone enslave the astral beasts. The desolate god was furious and he stared at Lu Yin with bloodshot eyes. You promise? How can you promise that? What's the use of your promise? Didn't Master promise it back then? No matter how times have changed, the greed of humans will never disappear. If Master can't stop it, how can you stop it? Lu Yin, Wu Tian, Lu Yuan and the rest were speechless. In that era the above heaven sect was at its peak. The primogenitor's prestige was greater than the heavens, but it still could not stop humans from enslaving the astral beasts. The stronger the primogenitor, the stronger the humans and the more the astral beasts would be enslaved. In the current era humans had surpassed the above heaven sect. Not only did they have the 3 realms and 6 paths, but they also had the 3 suns and 6 lords, the 8 paths and many progenitor powerhouses. If they defeated the spiritualized universe, would they really not enslave the astral beasts? Once Lu Yin surpassed the infinity powerhouses and surpassed the primogenitor, humans would worship him. What would they think of non-human life forms? The most obvious point was that none of the 3 suns and 6 lords were astral beasts. This was even more thorough than the 3 realms and 6 paths. Lu Yin did not lie to the desolate god, but there were some things that he could not change. The desolate god was one of the 3 realms and 6 paths. In that era he could protect the 4th mainland and suppress the humans. What about now? Who could do it? The Shifter Emperor? The Power Beast? Thuong? Jiao? Ancestral Mang? Shining? No one could do it. No one was the desolate god. Lu Yin wanted to eliminate the word enslave from the bottom of his heart. However, even if his cultivation level was high he could not stop it. In some dark corners under his high and mighty gaze, the desolate god could not stop. Darkness was still growing in the corners that were not allowed to exist. This was very similar to the former above the heavens. If the primogenitor did not notice it, Lu Yin might not be able to either. The Tianyuan universe was now united to fight against the spiritualized universe. All the conflicts had been shifted to external wars. It was not that the darkness was completely eliminated. Instead, everyone's attention was focused on fighting against the spiritualized universe. The desolate god had just been reborn and had not experienced the war against the spiritualized universe. Its focus was on internal affairs. It focused on the promise that even the primogenitor could not fulfill. Big Yellow, I'm sorry. There was a sigh and an apology. It was the primogenitor's voice. The desolate god's body trembled. It slowly turned its head and looked in a certain direction. There, the primogenitor walked over and looked at the desolate god with a complicated and apologetic gaze. The desolate god looked at the primogenitor blankly. Its voice was dry. Master. The primogenitor sighed. I'm sorry, Big Yellow. Lu Yin and the rest fell silent. The primogenitor was apologizing. This was the creator of the source of cultivation and the strongest person since the birth of the Tianyuan universe. He was apologizing to the desolate god and the astral beasts. In the past, the astral beasts had also slaughtered humans. That was the nature of their species. Ever since the primogenitor had ascended, he had taken in the desolate god as a disciple to keep the astral beasts in check. This had led to the rise of humans in that era. Although it was called taking in a disciple, it was actually a transaction. However, the relationship between the primogenitor and the desolate god was real. The desolate god's respect for the primogenitor and its love for its fellow disciples in the 3 realms and 6 Daoists were also real. However, as the above heaven sect flourished, humans' attitude towards the astral beasts changed. It could be called revenge, as the astral beasts had once committed a blood debt to humans. It could also be called greed, but who could refuse such a powerful mount? In particular, the primogenitor had the ancestral Mang wrapped around his waist and a divine eagle on his shoulder. This image was too deeply etched in people's hearts, and countless people imitated it. Perhaps this was the reason why the primogenitor had apologized. Regardless of the reason, the astral beast had been enslaved. Without experiencing that era, it was impossible to understand the calamity that beast had suffered. Even if the desolate god had allowed the destruction of the 4th mainland, it had not done anything wrong. It was not a human and it had its own standpoint. It had only allowed the destruction of a place where the astral beasts would be enslaved by humans. That was all. Master, do you know how many astral beasts were enslaved in that era? The desolate god's voice was low and hoarse. It pointed at the astral beasts that had been unlocked and transformed into human form. They were all enslaved. In that era, the astral beasts that were unwilling to be enslaved by humans died. Whether it was in the primordial space or other parallel dimensions, at least 1/3 of them died. Their blood was enough to dye the sky red. How many astral beasts were enslaved? Master Dino? You promised that when you took me in as your disciple, you hoped that the astral beasts and humans could live in peace. You hoped that the astral beasts would stop killing humans everywhere. We did it. What about you? You were high above and could not see the greed of humans, but we were suffering from it. The primogenitor closed his eyes. The desolate god sneered. You guarded the immemorial city and suppressed the strings. How much of it was for the astral beast? At that time you were only thinking about humans. Our standpoints were different. You were a human, so you thought about the survival of humans. I was the astral beast, so I only thought about the survival of the astral beast. The primogenitor opened his eyes and looked at the desolate god. I was high above and could not see the greed of humans. Then to the astral beast, were you not high above? When did you see all of them? The desolate god's gaze shook. When did you see the nature of some astral beast? The primogenitor asked. Chapter 3380. From the side, Wu Tian spoke up. Chu Haizi didn't slaughter astral beasts for no reason. Humans are greedy and beasts are bestial as well. Because of Heaven's Gate's prosperity, you only saw the strong side of humans. When have you ever seen people being slaughtered by astral beasts for no reason? Most of those people were ordinary people. Some enslaved astral beasts while others slaughtered humans. It's all relative. Chu Haizi slaughtered astral beasts with his own eyes. Many people were casually killed by astral beasts. That era seemed peaceful and Heaven's Gate suppressed everything. However, there were things in the dark that we couldn't see, and there were also things that you couldn't see. Lu Yuan sneered and pointed at the astral beasts that had been unlocked. Just ask those fellows behind you if they know about this. In their minds, slaughtering humans is normal. Who would tell you? Would you care if you stepped on an ant while walking? The desolate god growled. Nonsense. Lu Yuan laughed. We were wrong because we couldn't stop the astral beasts from enslaving them. But didn't you stop them from slaughtering humans as well? Regardless of whether it's a time of war or a time of peace, conflicts between different species will never cease. It's just a matter of seeing and not seeing. Hongyan Mavis interrupted Lu Yuan's words. Of course, we also admit that that era was too dark for you star beasts. Master's apology to you is true, but no one will apologize to you for slaughtering the star beasts. Wu Tian sighed. Chu Haizi was too decisive and ruthless. Lu Yin did not think that the Grim Reaper had done anything wrong. From his point of view, both the humans and astral beasts were under his rule, but the conflict between the two species was irreconcilable. If the humans wanted to enslave the astral beasts would turn around and slaughter the humans. The only way to resolve this was to completely suppress one side. The Grim Reaper slaughtered astral beasts in order to pass down their fear, and he had done it. Astral beasts were naturally suppressed and terrified by the aura of death. If he were the Grim Reaper, the next thing he would do would be to use the aura of death to suppress the astral beasts within a certain range. This would ensure that humans couldn't easily enter, and also ensure that the astral beasts couldn't leave. This was the only solution that he could think of from his perspective. It was cruel, but it was effective. After all, they were humans. However, Lu Yin did not mention this. He hadn't seen the situation of that era with his own eyes. Humans had their own standpoints and starry sky behemoths had their own standpoints. Both sides were in the right. What mattered was the strong and the weak. Did the Aragami really not know that there were astral beasts slaughtering humans? That might not be the case. In its opinion, it should be a small matter, but the humans themselves did not think so. This was an irreconcilable contradiction. What happened in the past has already happened. Now we are facing the risk of the universe being destroyed. Big Yellow, do you really want to betray the Tianyuan universe and join the spiritualized universe? Jiao Lanjilo's tone was cold as he stared at the desolate god. The Aragami replied firmly, "At the very least, I don't want to be associated with you. Senior, you're overthinking things. The spiritualized universe will not accept you." The Aragami looked at him. "What do you mean?" Lu Yin's lips curled up. With Senior's strength, a spiritualized universe would definitely not be able to reject you. However, if Senior wants to bring all those astral beasts with you, that would be unrealistic. Senior, do you think that a universe with a unified cultivation method and resources would accept a large number of astral beasts? Maybe I can accept him, but this chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. You need to change the word. Lu Yin's expression changed. Captivity. The Aragami was enraged, and the Avicii polearm suddenly stabbed towards Lu Yin. Junior, how dare you? The primogenitor appeared in front of Lu Yin and casually pushed the Avicii polearm aside. Big Yellow, let him finish. The Aragami gripped the polearm tightly and snorted before glaring at Lu Yin. Lu Yin shrugged. There are too many astral beasts in the Tianyuan universe. Senior, you fell out with us because of them. If you join the spiritualized universe and can't bring these astral beasts with you, then you'll just let them be destroyed by the spiritualized universe. Where is your determination? As for the spiritualized universe, they will not trust any life forms from other universes. Whether they belong to another universe or not, their auras are different. They are also afraid that these astral beasts will steal their resources. No matter how small the resources are, they are still resources. Senior, don't underestimate the greed of living beings. By the way, the spiritualized universe's rulers are also humans. The Aragami gritted its teeth. Humans, humans, and humans again. Why are there humans everywhere? It felt helpless. The Aragami still had the primogenitor and the 3 realms and 6 Daoists in the Tianyuan universe. If it joined the spiritualized universe, it would be filled with enemies everywhere. It would be even worse than the era of the above heaven. No one spoke as they were all giving the Aragami time. It was still angry that the above heaven had been willing to be destroyed by the Eternals, so it could not change its mind so quickly. The primogenitor waved a hand and the people around him dispersed. He wanted to speak with the Aragami alone. No one knew what the primogenitor and the Aragami talked about, but it was obvious that the Aragami respected the primogenitor greatly. Even if it was angry and resentful, it still had feelings for the primogenitor, including Lu Yuan and the others. Master is actually very good to Big Yellow. It really is a master-disciple relationship. What a pity. Lu Yuan sighed. Lu Yin looked into the distance. As the ruler of the Fourth Mainland, it allowed the Eternals to destroy it. No matter what its motives were, the Aragami is guilty in the eyes of the above heaven. Even humans would fight against each other, let alone different creatures. The Eternals had established the Kingdom of Eternity and wanted humans to coexist with the Corpse Kings, but it was impossible. Similarly, in a universe where humans had developed to a certain extent, it was impossible for them to coexist peacefully with the astral beasts. Lu Yin looked at the astral beasts that had been unlocked, and no one knew what he was thinking. After a long time, the primogenitor waved at Lu Yin and the others walked over. Big Yellow, tell us what happened back then, the primogenitor said. The Aragami's expression was gloomy as it met everyone's gaze, especially Lu Yin. It slowly said, Master was plotted against. I don't know about this. The first mainland was destroyed and the fourth mainland was destroyed shortly after. At that time the one who came for me was Tiango. Tiango? Lu Yin exclaimed. Lu Yuan and the others were stunned. They had not expected the destruction of the fourth mainland to be related to Tiango. From what they knew, Tiango only knew how to bark and had an abnormal defense. Other than that, it had nothing else. On the battlefield, It had only been able to hold back a single human powerhouse and had not killed many people. The Aragami said, Tiango came to me on behalf of the Eternals and persuaded me not to become enemies with the Eternals. At that time, because the humans were enslaving the astral beasts, I agreed. I injected the savage scripture into the source stone technique, split myself apart and waited for my rebirth. Do you really believe that you will be reborn? Lu Yin was puzzled. No one would believe that. This chapter is not finished. Please turn the page. Well, this was handing over his life to someone else. The Aragami calmly replied, at least I won't die. Aside from the astral beasts, no one knows that I'm waiting for my rebirth, not even the Eternals. The Eternals also agreed not to attack the fourth mainland. When the fourth mainland was destroyed, a group of astral beasts died, but at least half of their bloodline was preserved. What's the origin of Tiango? Lu Yin asked. They were all too curious. The Aragami replied, before the humans appeared, there were only astral beasts in the starter space, including the entire Tianyuan universe. They revered chaos and existed in various races. Tiango is a creature from that era, and its history is even older than the humans. My race also originated from that era. Lu Yin was shocked. Before the humans were born? The primogenitor said, humans were not born at the same time as the universe. Before the humans appeared, there were creatures in this universe. I've heard of this chaos before, but it seems to have disappeared. The Aragami nodded. Chaos disappeared a long time ago. Otherwise, when Master wanted to establish the above heaven sect, the first obstacle would have been chaos. Chaos is extremely powerful and it has no race behind it. However, it can suppress the entire universe by itself and no astral beast dares to resist. Senior primogenitor, how were humans born? Lu Yin asked. It was not just this universe, but the spiritualized universe had humans as well. What about the other universes? The primogenitor shook his head. If you're talking about birth, I really don't know. One day I suddenly gained consciousness and appeared. I took care of the universe's operations, watched the astral beasts, and created the astral source's cultivation path. Taihong was the same. If you're talking about origin, I really don't know. The others also discovered one after another. There was no first male and female pair that created humans. Naturally, the human race appeared. The Aragami continued, in the beginning humans were just ants in the universe. They were extremely weak, and they weren't even enough to fill the gaps between the astral beasts' teeth. However, their numbers grew and grew until it was terrifying. They were everywhere in the universe and no one knew how they were born. They spread throughout the universe in the shortest amount of time, but they weren't much of a threat until Master rose to power and fought against the astral beasts. He took me in as his disciple and used my race to suppress the astral beasts. Gradually, the above heaven sect was formed and the era of humans began. The primogenitor still had some complaints when it was brought up. Lu Yin could imagine how difficult it had been for the primogenitor to lead the humans in that era, but now was not the time to think about that. How do we find Tiango? The Aragami was confused. Why do you want to find it? Tiango follows the Eternal. If we find it, we'll be able to find the Eternal and completely eradicate this scourge. The Aragami shook its head. It's impossible to find it unless it comes to you on its own. But that's even more difficult. What do you mean? Lu Yin asked. The Aragami explained, Tiango belongs to an era before humans appeared. It respects and believes in primal chaos. If you can find something related to primal chaos with Tiango's sense of smell, it will be able to smell it even from a parallel universe. It might come to you. But primal chaos was even more ancient and it was difficult to find even in the above heaven sect, let alone now. Master, you don't have it. Hongyan Mavis asked. The primogenitor was helpless. When I appeared, primal chaos had already disappeared for a long time. I learned of its existence through some astral beasts, but I didn't find anything related to it. End of chapter. Chapter 3381. The Desolate God answered, we don't have it either, not even Tiango. Chaos existence is a fact, but it's more like a legend from our era. It's very difficult to find anything related to it. Lu Yin sighed. Finding the true God was the most difficult thing right now, and he couldn't go to the spiritualized universe if he couldn't find it. He had to go to the spiritualized universe anyway. What does chaos look like? What are its characteristics? We can search the entire Tianyuan universe. Maybe we can find some clues. Jiao said. The desolate god raised a hand and drew an image of chaos in the air. Wu Tian and the rest frowned. When they were taken in as disciples, the progenitor had already been cultivating for a long time. Chaos was already a legend and they had never seen it before. The progenitor looked at the image of chaos. It looks like this. Lu Yin looked at it as well, but why did it look so familiar? It was similar to the dragons in Earth's legends. Right, there was a type of insect in the hive called the stone dragon, which also looked like a flying dragon when combined. Lu Yin had never seen anything like this in the universe outside of Earth. There were dragons in other stars, but they were different from Earth. To be precise, they were different from the dragons in Earth's Eastern legends. This was a legend unique to Earth's Eastern legends, but why would the hive take such a form? Was it a coincidence? Also, chaos looked very similar to the dragons in Earth's Eastern legends. Was it a coincidence? Too many coincidences could not be considered a coincidence. Lu Yin stared at chaos form, trying to figure out what was wrong. The more he looked, the more familiar it seemed. It wasn't just a legend from Earth. He had definitely seen this form somewhere else. Where? Lu Yin closed his eyes. At his level of strength, he wouldn't be familiar with certain things for no reason. He had definitely seen them before. Just like Yen Gang, Lu Yin had long forgotten about him, but he could still remember this name from the depths of his memories. Chaos form was definitely not something he had seen on Earth, so he had to find it from the depths of his memories. No one disturbed Lu Yin, as they could all tell that he had recalled something. The desolate god looked at Lu Yin curiously. It was hard to imagine how a human could reach such heights in just 100 years. How did this brat cultivate? Was he a descendant of the Lu family? How could the fertile lands produce such a descendant? It glanced at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan looked at it and raised a brow. The desolate god was not happy. He maliciously guessed that the Lu family's bloodline was not pure. Suddenly he opened his eyes and retrieved a stone orb from his cosmic ring. This was it. Back when Lu Yin had brought the Mist Ancestor's Mirror to sweep through Junior Progenitor Planet, he had rolled his die and obtained a round ball with a diameter of 100 meters. Back then he had used all of his strength to crush it, but he hadn't been able to break it. He knew that it wasn't a simple object, so he had kept it. There was an image on it and he had assumed that it was a snake. The stone orb appeared in front of everyone. There was a diagram on the stone orb, and now that they looked at it, it was extremely similar to chaos. The desolate god stared at the pattern on it and was stunned. Chaos? The progenitor looked at Lu Yin strangely. The others also looked at him strangely. Was that even possible? How could this kid have everything? It was too magical. Lu Yin also felt that it was strange. At the time he had not even reached the level of an emissary, and he had obtained this ball with one roll of his die. He did not know who had placed it in his cosmic ring, but this was something that had happened a long time ago. At the time he had not reached the level where he could fight against the 4 cardinal scales. Now the 4 cardinal scales had become a thing of the past. Is this related to chaos? Lu Yin asked expectantly. The origami took a closer look at the orb before looking at Lu Yin again. Her eyes were filled with awe as she said, "If I'm not mistaken, this is a sacred item that some astral beasts worshipped. How did you get it?" "By accident," Lu Yin answered naturally. The desolate god was speechless. "This thing is from a very long time ago, and it can be traced back to before the birth of humans. Even in our era, it's impossible to find it. It's a stone after all, and it can be preserved for a very long time. Why can't it be found?" Lu Yin was puzzled. The desolate god shook her head. Chaos disappeared and other astral beasts naturally wanted to replace it. If we don't deal with the remnants of chaos, how can we replace it? It wasn't easy for Master to establish the Above Heaven sect, and he had to fight against all sorts of astral beasts. Why else do you think he took me in as a disciple? The progenitor coughed. "Big Yellow, this thing can attract the Tiango, right?" The desolate god nodded. "It should be, but it's too long ago. It's best to get close to the Tiango so that it won't notice." "That's easy." Lu Yin was excited. He finally had a way to scheme against the eternity. Progenitor Qin could find the Forgotten Ruins god. Although he couldn't get close, as long as he knew the general direction, taking out this thing should be able to attract the Tiango. As long as they weren't in the Genesis space, the eternity might not be on guard. This is an item used to worship chaos. Back then things were much simpler than now. Chaos would really bestow blessings when worshipped, which means that this thing has the power of chaos. If you study it, you can definitely learn something, the desolate god said, looking at the stone with a yearning expression. In this era, people yearned for the three realms, the six paths, and the progenitor. The astral beasts of the desolate god's era yearned for chaos. This was a pursuit that originated from faith. It was like being able to see a god up close after a lifetime of faith. Lu Yin wasn't interested in chaos. Right now he just wanted to find the one true god. Mr. Mu was suppressing the sequence's string on behalf of the progenitor, and now was the perfect time for the progenitor to act. The progenitor also had the same thought. There are some things that should be resolved. I once had the chance to kill the eternity, but I didn't do it. Even though he was different from us, we were all humans from the very beginning. The progenitor sighed. During those days when we were suppressed by the astral beasts, we had feelings for each other. It's a pity that those feelings have disappeared forever. Lu Yin didn't care about what the progenitor was feeling, and he immediately contacted progenitor Qin. 10 days later, under the unfamiliar sky, progenitor Qin pointed in a direction. I can only vaguely sense Wang Miao Miao in that direction. If I can sense her, the eternity will notice me first and he won't be able to catch up. Lu Yin looked in that direction. That's enough, senior. You should leave first. Don't make the eternity wary. Progenitor Qin asked, can you really lure the eternity and the others here? Lu Yin nodded, and when he saw progenitor Qin hesitate, he smiled. Don't worry. We still don't know whether or not Wang Xiaoyu is a traitor. Her situation is special, so we'll be merciful. Progenitor Qin was grateful. Thank you. With that he left. After progenitor Qin left, Lu Yin stood alone in space and took out the stone orb from his cosmic ring. The moment the stone orb appeared far away in a parallel space, the heavenly hound suddenly raised its head and let out an excited howl, giving Yan Gang a fright. The one true god, the Forgotten Ruins god, and the others all looked at Tiango. Unless it was in a battle, Tiango wouldn't make such a big noise. Furthermore, it seemed very excited. The one true god hadn't seen Tiango this excited for many years. Chaos aura? The one true god was surprised. Tiango howled at him a few times. Blacklist god, the Forgotten Ruins god, and the others were confused as they had never heard of chaos before. Chaos name brought the one true god back to the endless past, when that human had just appeared. Chaos was already a legend, unlike now when even legends had disappeared. Chaos was the belief of the astral beasts, a true god that the desolate god couldn't compare to. In fact, no one knew how strong chaos was, including the progenitor and the one true god. However, based on the strength of the astral beasts of that era, chaos was at least at the level of crossing the bitter disaster. If he was still alive, he might have reached the eternal life realm, but that was unlikely. During chaos time, he had left behind legends in this universe, which meant that he hadn't rebooted this universe. If he wanted to reach the eternal life realm without rebooting the universe, could he have really crossed the bitter disaster? That was unlikely, or else how could there be no traces of legends? Rather than saying that chaos was missing, it was more accurate to say that he was dead. Then you can go, I won't go. The one true god's eyes flashed and he looked at Tiango. The aura of chaos that hasn't been there for so many years suddenly appeared. Be careful. Tiango barked and rushed out excitedly. The Forgotten Ruins god was curious. My lord, what is chaos? The one true god looked at Tiango's back. A legendary creature. The Forgotten Ruins god was surprised. Even you have only heard of a legend? The one true god said in a low voice. The history of humans isn't that long. Blacklist god turned and looked at the starry sky. The history of humans? Indeed, it wasn't that long, as the life in the universe of consciousness could live much longer than humans. He didn't know how humans had reached their current height. Later, the Green Emperor brought Yan Gang to follow the one true god and the others. If it wasn't for the Green Emperor, Yan Gang, an ordinary cultivator, would have died in the strange starry sky. Glancing at the Green Emperor, Yan Gang felt uneasy. Only he knew that he couldn't control Xianxia, but she was so respectful to him that he understood that it was all an act. The Green Emperor was pretending to be controlled by him so that the one true god and the others wouldn't worry. Yan Gang himself was just a puppet. As for this puppet, he couldn't say anything about it as it had no value. As for cultivation, he wanted to, but the one true god didn't care about him, and neither did the Forgotten Ruins god or Blacklist god. His life was now tied to the Azure Kings, and at this moment he was filled with regret. He regretted not handing over the hive to the Above Heavens sect and gaining their protection. Then he would have attacked those who wanted to curry favor with Lu Ying instead of focusing all of his hatred on Lu Ying. He was too insignificant, so insignificant that he didn't even have the right to take revenge on Lu Ying. On the other side, Tiango tore through the void and arrived at Lu Yin's parallel universe. Lu Ying hid his aura and stayed far away from the stone orb, waiting for Tiango to appear. Tiango appeared, but it was only Tiango. Lu Ying frowned as the one true god was too cautious. If Tiango appeared alone, it wouldn't be a problem even if it was surrounded. The stone orb could only attract Tiango but not the one true god. It seems like it failed, the primogenitor said. Lu Yin's lips curled up. No, it succeeded. The primogenitor was astonished. Tiango successfully found the stone orb and excitedly pushed it towards the one true god. The excitement in its eyes was as if it had found its long-lost master. Chapter 3382. Lu Ying was curious about chaos. It looked like a dragon that only existed on Earth, but it was very similar to the insect nest stone dragon. What was the connection? Tiango quickly disappeared. Not chasing. The ancestor was puzzled. Lu Ying took out his compass and dipped the stone ball in illusionary gravel. That kind of gravel could even touch Tianxi's body, let alone a stone ball and Tiango. Senior, I'll leave eternity to you. Lu Yin's expression was solemn as he tore through the void with the compass. Let's go. On the other side, Tiango pushed the stone ball and found the one true god. The Forgotten Ruins god and the others were surprised. Stone ball? The stone ball was 100 meters in diameter and looked ordinary. Other than the engravings on it, there was nothing else. Tiango was so excited that it stuck out its tongue. There was an aura of chaos on it and it was very strong. It must have been worshipped in ancient times. This was what it wanted the most. The one true god looked at the engravings on the stone ball. It really is chaos. Suddenly, his expression turned cold. Not good. The next moment, the void in front of him split open as a hand reached out and hit the one true god. Eternity, it's time to pay back what you owe me. The one true god's eyes narrowed. Absolute beginning. Boom. The void trembled as the Forgotten Ruins god and the others were pushed away. The terrifying aura almost made them faint. The ancestor made his move at this moment. Tiango wailed as the stone ball was pushed away. Lu Ying followed closely behind the ancestor and took out Mount Supreme. Figures rushed out one after another. It was Lu Yuan, Wu Tian, Hongyan Mavis and the others, including the Void God, Wood God and Victorious Celestial. Yan Gang's face turned pale. Lu Ying. He Wuxian didn't even think and wanted to escape. A huge hand slapped him across the void. Don't even think about escaping. It was the giant ancestor. The Forgotten Ruins god pulled Wang Xiaoyu and quickly retreated. Hongyan Mavis, the Void God and Wood God attacked them. On the other side, the Azure King retreated with Yan Gang. Countless insects appeared around them, but they were easily wiped out by the Wood God. Although the insects were powerful, they were at the level of sequence laws and could easily destroy them. Su Wangtian slapped down with his slippers. Tiango crashed into Su Wangtian. A chaotic battle to surround and kill the one true god and other experts suddenly began. Just like the Battle of Disaster Region, the Battle of Immemorial City, and the Battle of the Stone Gate, wars always came very suddenly. This was Lu Yin's style. If he controlled too much, there would be too many variables. If his actions could be easily grasped by others, then how would he be able to defeat the Eternals, who possessed unparalleled intelligence? Ancestor Hui relied on his wisdom to plan for eternity, and even the only true god was tricked by him. Then Lu Ying only relied on variables. The more variables there were, the harder it would be for others to see through him. At this moment, nobody could escape. He Wuxian, Forgetful Ruins god, King Qing and the others could not escape. Lu Ying looked into the distance. The most important thing was still the battle between the primogenitor and the only true god. The only true god was still sealed in the Six Paths Reincarnation World, and in the Golden Six Paths Reincarnation World, there was still the true god heaven changing art. That layer of the true god heaven swapping technique protected the only true god, and even Lu Ying and the others would find it difficult to break through. However, it was the primogenitor who had made a move. Countless years of grudges were finally released at this moment. The primogenitor reached into the Six Paths Reincarnation World and looked at the only true god coldly. Eternals, it's time for you to pay for what you did to me and for Tai Hong's life. The palm hit the true god heaven swapping technique, and it cracked. No one understood the only true god better than the primogenitor. The only true god also understood the primogenitor. I didn't expect you to not waste your time after all these years. You actually saw through my true god heaven swapping technique. With a bang, the true god heaven swapping technique shattered. The primogenitor's palm landed on the only true god's chest, and he was sent flying while vomiting blood. The only true god raised his hand, and countless sword shadows flew towards the primogenitor. It was the 10,000 swords. 10,000 Daoist converging sword was extremely powerful, and it had almost killed Lu Yin in the past. Could also allow the sole true god to escape. Every sword shadow was a sliver of time that belonged to the sole true god. When a sword shadow was broken, the sole true god could attack or dodge. But then ripples spread out and the void changed. Lu Yin looked up in shock. Blue Sky Palace. He didn't expect the primogenitor to rebuild the Blue Sky Palace in such a short time. The Blue Sky Palace was sealed by the Four Locks formation, and the only way to break free was to melt into the water of the Yellow Springs. The primogenitor once said that he could no longer cultivate the Blue Sky Palace, but it was a lie. The 10,000 swords was useless against the Blue Sky Palace. Lu Yin stared at this scene. The Blue Sky Palace was the nemesis of the 10,000 swords? No, that was not right. The primogenitor used some kind of power that was not consumed in the Blue Sky Palace. The primogenitor understood the only true god. The only true god's techniques, strength, talents, battle techniques, and so on were all calculated by the primogenitor. The time of the 10,000 swords turned into nothingness in the Blue Sky Palace. The primogenitor used his finger as a sword, and countless finger shadows imprinted on the only true god's forehead. The only true god coughed out blood, and a blurry sword shadow appeared on his forehead before it dissipated. His vision blurred and he kept retreating, his face pale. He had never seen the primogenitor like this. His eyes were filled with endless coldness and murderous intent. How many years have you lived? I've long since calculated the location of your 10,000 swords. Eternal, did De Chong die at your hands or at Grandmaster Grass's? The only true god took out 4 swords from his cosmic ring. They were the primogenitor's swords and he slashed at the primogenitor. Time was cut apart and in that instant both space and time around the two became chaotic. Even a glance was enough to cause chaos and countless images appeared. These were the traces left behind by time in that area. The primogenitor's swords could suppress time, but now all 4 swords attacked at the same time and time was instantly shattered. The 4 swords came from the 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 6th mainlands. As for the rest, the primogenitor's sword from the 1st mainlands had been broken, and the primogenitor had given it to Lu Yin, who had used his Dai's enhance to repair it. There was also the 5th mainland's sword that had been suppressed in the above heaven. Lu Yin had used the primogenitor's sword to kill Wei Nu, and it had come from the 1st mainland's broken sword. Now the remaining 4 swords had appeared. Using my swords to kill me? First dust appeared on the primogenitor's forehead, and it was like a magnet that sucked the 4 swords away. Lu Yin was dumbfounded. There was such a thing. That's right, first dust had created the land and the primogenitor's swords had suppressed it. How could the only true god not have thought of this? The only true god used the primogenitor's swords to retreat for a moment. He looked at the primogenitor. Tai Chu, although you haven't regressed, you haven't improved either. After all these years you've found my weaknesses. Today none of you will be able to do anything to me. As he spoke, sequence particles surrounded his body. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold, and he released the starry sky from his heart and swept it across the only true god. The true god looked at Lu Yin. Dao Lord Lu, there are strong and weak sequence law cultivators. I don't need as many sequence particles as Tai Hong, but do you really think that there are few of them? Lu Yin stared at the true god, the sequence foundation. The true god praised, smart. The primogenitor brought me the landscape map from the spiritualized universe, and it gave me inspiration. Since then I've recultivated the sequence law. Tai Chu, this new sequence law is called the unification of heavenly Tao. Lu Yin had only seen progenitor Chen recultivate the sequence law so far. No wonder the true god praised progenitor Chen so much. Progenitor Chen had walked the same path as him. Nonsense. The primogenitor waved his hand and the four swords slashed at the true god. At the same time, a huge fist appeared behind the true god. It came from the ancestor of the giants. He had abandoned Zhou Xian and suddenly attacked the true god. The four swords and the ancestor of the giants' fist entered the six paths of reincarnation at the same time, surrounding the true god from the front and back. This was a true encirclement and the true god had no way to avoid it. But he didn't move. The next moment, the ancestor of the giant's fist was crushed by the four primogenitor's swords. The ancestor of the giants wailed, and his blood splattered across the starry sky. The primogenitor was stunned. How could this be? Only the true god was calm. He looked at Lu Yin who was staring at him. This is the unification of heavenly Tao. Lu Yin was confused. What had just happened? The ancestor of the giant's right arm had been crushed. If not for the primogenitor's quick reaction and timely retracting the primogenitor's swords, the ancestor of the giant's entire body would have been crushed. The primogenitor stared at the true god. Recultivate the sequence law? In the past, the primogenitor, the true god Tai Hong, Mr. Mu, Star Toad, and the others all understood each other. The primogenitor especially understood the true god. The two had fought side by side. The true god's sequence law was extremely powerful and had a domineering destructive power. It was a destructive sequence law, but it was completely different now. He had changed. He had transformed into his former self. The primogenitor had suppressed the sequence law for a long time, but the true god had changed his sequence law and created the Eternals. Taichu, you think too highly of yourself. Do you really think that I can't surpass you after such a long time? If not for the six paths of reincarnation, none of you would be my opponent. Even if I can only protect myself now, which of you can do anything to me? The true god's pride was on full display at that moment. He was the creator of the Eternals, the earliest human, and the true greatest expert of the Tianyuan universe. Nearby, a lantern appeared. Came from Zhou Xian. The colossal ancestor had launched a sneak attack on the true god because Wu Tian had his eyes on Zhou Xian. The pressure from a primordial realm expert forced Zhou Xian to use the freedom of the true god. He even released his consciousness that was on par with a primordial realm expert. The lantern shattered. Even Wu Tian was affected. The three ultimate skills of true gods were not sequence laws. They were like concepts, but they were not concepts. They could threaten primordial realm experts. Zhou Xian hurried over to the true god's side. You've actually recultivated the sequence law. I've underestimated you, the primogenitor sighed in amazement. The true god exhaled. I've also underestimated Tai Hong. She's such an arrogant person, yet she's actually willing to sacrifice herself to seal me. He spent so much time scheming. The price of the six paths of reincarnation is not just her life but her life as well. Taichu, you can't kill me. Once I undo the six paths of reincarnation you'll all die. The primogenitor waved his hand, and the primogenitor's sword slashed towards the true god. You want to overturn the heavens with mere sequence laws? Chapter 3383. In the distance, Tiango howled as it endured the attacks of Hongyan Mavis and Zhelan Zhiluo while shielding the Forgotten Ruins god and Wang Xiaoyu behind it. The Azure King protected Yan Gang against Su Wangtian and Lu Tianyi's attacks. He was already injured, and if not for his Corpse King transformation he would not have lasted until now. Yan Gang was terrified. He should not have been able to participate in such a grand battle. The celestial victor wielded his golden staff and swung it down from afar towards the one true god. The staff was shattered by the progenitor's sword. The celestial victor did not understand. How could this be? The progenitor's expression sank as he still could not break it. The one true god had condensed a sequence law and cultivated it to the size of a sequence foundation. Even though it was not as large as a spiritualized universe's sequence foundation and could only envelop the surroundings, it was still something that he had cultivated for countless years. Even the progenitor could not break it. Lu Yin raised his hand and looked at the die. Black Wuxian's gift was finally about to be activated. Black Wuxian was Lu Yin's gift to the one true god. When Black Wuxian had betrayed the Eternals and joined the above heaven, Lu Yin had not suspected him at first. Black Wuxian had revealed the illusory poison and the mirage domain, and he had even attacked the Eternals during the Battle of Calamity region, which could be considered as helping the above heaven. However, Black Wuxian had actually been intentionally sent by the one true god to the above heaven to scheme against Lu Yin with his primordial realm consciousness. If not for the Hui ancestor, they really would have been tricked. The one true god had been able to destroy the former above heaven, which meant that he was extremely intelligent. However, there was someone who was even smarter than him, the Hui ancestor. The one true god could scheme against everyone, but he could not hide from the Hui ancestor who had left behind too many backup plans. Lu Yin had also left a backup plan for the one true god through Black Wuxian. This backup plan was the illusory poison. The illusory poison seemed like a type of poison, but it was actually the saliva of illusory. When Black Wuxian had met Lu Yin and the others in the space where illusory resided, he had told Lu Yin that he had specially collected the illusory poison for the Eternals. The illusory poison was very unique as it was not a man-made poison. Rather than calling it a poison, it was more like a power that could devour strife. Because He Wuxian had been in contact with the illusory poison for a long time, he had unknowingly been infected with this kind of power. Although it was very weak, it was like an illusory sand that touched his body and merged into his body. After Lu Yin had subdued Su Wang, he had specially researched the Su Wang's poison. When he had discovered that it was a type of power, he had been infected with some of it and fused it into his body. He had used the Su Wang's poison to roll his die, and he had seen balls of light in that dark space. One of them was Su Wang, and it was very large and very bright. Then who did the others belong to? A fabricated race? No, Xu Wang did not have a race. It was an individual. The only explanation was that it was a creature infected with the poison of falsehood. One of them was definitely Black Wuxian, the ball of light that was almost as bright as Su Wang. At that time, Lu Yin had not wanted to pry into He Wuxian's secrets because He Wuxian had sought refuge with Lu Yin. That would be too despicable, so Lu Yin had not fused with He Wuxian. However, Lu Yin had tried twice, and through He Wuxian's position he had confirmed that one of the bright orbs belonged to He Wuxian. If He Wuxian wasn't from the eternal race and was really helping the above sky sect, he would never have used this trump card, just like how he no longer rolled 6 pips in the origin space. He could not accept fusing with one of his own, and that was his bottom line. However, He Wuxian was a traitor, so this trump card was naturally left to the sole true god. After learning that He Wuxian was a traitor, Lu Yin had wanted to fuse with him, but he was afraid of being discovered by the sole true god. If the sole true god could leave behind a seal in the ancient god's body, then it might not be impossible for him to do so in He Wuxian's body. Lu Yin did not know why He Wuxian was so loyal to the sole true god, but it was very likely that he had been sealed just like the ancient god. Lu Yin could only use this trump card once. If not for the desolate god mentioning chaos, Lu Yin would have already planned to fuse with He Wuxian. Otherwise he would never have been able to find the sole true god. The die slowly spun. The primogenitor and the others had attacked the sole true god, and Lu Yin had also attacked while rolling his die to prevent the sole true god from detecting him. The sole true god had basically ignored the attacks of the primogenitor and the others, and he had even protected He Wuxian behind him. The die stopped spinning. 1 pip. Continue. 3 pips. Continue. 6 pips. Lu Yin's eyes widened and his consciousness appeared in the dark space. He saw the bright ball of light and rushed over without hesitation. This was also the reason why he had not brought Su Wang along. He did not want to waste time trying to figure out who was who. His consciousness fused with the ball of light and the world spun around him. The scene before him had completely changed, and in front of him was the sole true god. Lu Yin heaved a sigh of relief as he had succeeded. Even though he had guessed that there was a 90% chance of success, the moment he actually succeeded he felt an indescribable sense of joy. There was a seal just like the ancient god. If he had been any further away from the sole true god, the seal would have detected that He Wuxian had been fused with, and Lu Yin's method would have been useless. However, he was now too close to the sole true god. He had already learned the true god's freedom technique, and now that he was controlling it with He Wuxian's body, it was incomparably smooth. Memories flooded in, and the name on one of the nearby lanterns changed from Wu Tian to Eternal. Lu Yin struck out at the sole true god, who was caught off guard and struck in the back. The sole true god had not been on guard against He Wuxian at all, and he was suddenly struck by a palm. He looked behind him in shock, and at that moment the seal that he had placed in He Wuxian's body was activated. However, it was too late. From the moment Lu Yin had fused with the sole true god to the moment he struck out with his palm, The entire process had taken less than a second. The lanterns shattered at the same time, and the sole true god spat out a mouthful of blood. The sequence particles around him became unstable. "This is a gift for you." Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Yin's consciousness returned to his body, and the starry sky around his heart expanded. The sequence particles around the sole true god were repelled. The sole true god suddenly turned to look at Lu Yin, his voice filled with unwillingness. "Turbid treasure." In front of him, the progenitor's sword had pierced through the 6 paths of reincarnation and pierced through the sole true god's body. He Wuxian was pierced by one of the progenitor's swords, and his body was sent flying. He did not understand what had just happened, but when the sole true god said the words "turbid treasure," he understood that he had been controlled by Lu Yin. In the past, the Eternals had been wary of Lu Yin's methods of controlling them, so they had faced each other without moving. Who would have thought that many years later in this battle, the sole true god would be affected? But how could this be? Lu Yin had been able to control the other Eternals because they had cultivated divine power, but the sole true god had dispersed his divine power to prevent himself from being controlled. Using the true god's freedom technique required divine power, but the sole true god's immortal codex did not come from him. Instead, it came from the seed that cultivated the true god's immortal codex. It did not count as his own cultivation, so how could he still be controlled? After many years, countless people knew about Lu Yin's use of turbid treasures, and the conditions for triggering certain abilities were also speculated. He Wuxian had been very cautious. After pretending to join the Above Heaven sect, he had dispersed his divine power because he was afraid of being controlled by Lu Yin. The sole true god was even more cautious. He had placed a seal in He Wuxian's body. The seal was enough for him to detect if He Wuxian had been assimilated within 3 seconds. However, in the battle just now, he had allowed He Wuxian to be so close to him to protect him. He had forgotten that Lu Yin had turbid treasures, and the sneak attack had succeeded. In fact, no one had expected Lu Yin to be able to assimilate into He Wuxian's body. Neither He Wuxian nor the sole true god would have thought that the illusory poison was a power that could be cultivated. The sole true god could only blame the sole true god for having He Wuxian collect the illusory poison for so many years, and Lu Yin had coincidentally subdued the illusory poison and detected this power. Otherwise, even if He Wuxian had been assimilated because he cultivated divine power, it would not have been so easy to find He Wuxian. The sole true god's carelessness had only lasted for a moment. All of the coincidences and calculations had succeeded, which was why the sole true god's defenses had been instantly broken. The progenitor took advantage of this opportunity to slash at the sole true god with the progenitor's sword. The sole true god's sequence laws had been rejected once, and they were no longer as stable. While heavily injured, he would definitely not be able to withstand the progenitor's attack. Lu Yin was just about to attack the sole true god when he sensed that He Wuxian wanted to escape. Regardless of whether it was the sole true god or He Wuxian, Lu Yin would not let either of them go. Above his head, golden light blossomed as the god's sealing catalog appeared. Hongyan Mavis, Wu Tian, and the other experts walked out one by one and charged towards He Wuxian. Meanwhile, Lu Yin himself attacked the sole true god. He grasped the void and stirred up the clouds. Under the sky palace, the limit of a living being's strength was unleashed along with numerous palm strikes. The sole true god's eyes suddenly changed and his pupils disappeared. Lanterns appeared around him as he used the true god's freedom technique. Although the 6 paths of reincarnation had sealed him and prevented him from attacking, he was still able to unleash all of his strength and instantly unleash the 6 paths of reincarnation to protect himself. However, the price he had to pay was extremely tragic. 4 progenitor's swords slashed at the sole true god's body, but the sole true god's right hand swept out and instantly knocked away 3 of them. His palm grabbed the last progenitor's sword's edge while his left hand blocked in another direction. Lu Yin's palm landed there, and with a boom the sole true god did not move at all. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. Although the sole true god had blocked both his and the progenitor's attacks, Lu Yin saw hope in killing the sole true god. The sole true god had been nonchalant before, thinking that he could ignore their attacks with his sequence laws. Now, however, he was relying on battle techniques. This was a qualitative difference. The progenitor gripped the sword's hilt tightly, and the blade's edge was piercingly cold. Dust swirled around the blade, and the sole true god's palm was torn apart. The blade tore through the void and pierced the sole true God's body. Eternal. Is it really impossible to step into the eternal realm without reopening the Tianyuan universe? Is that what you're thinking? The sole true God's mouth was filled with blood as he stared at the progenitor, who was so close yet so difficult to touch. I'm different from you. You're human and I'm not. Humans have limitless possibilities, and these possibilities are what we dream of. Don't you know? I'm just a failure. 3 progenitors' swords slashed out from beside the progenitor. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 progenitors' swords could not pierce through the sole true God's body. Lu Yin took a step forward and grabbed one of the progenitor's swords. He exerted his strength, and his extreme strength shattered the void, causing ripples to spread out endlessly. The sword pierced through the sole true God's neck and fresh blood flowed down the blade. What you're doing now, are you doing it willingly? Lu Yin asked again. Chapter 3384. He had asked the same question when he had chased after the bone ship in Immemorial City and watched the sole true God escape. This question had been in his heart for far too long. Everything seemed clear, but there was always a haze that shrouded Lu Yin's heart. He hoped that the sole true God could give him an answer. And the fewer people who heard this answer, the better. The sole true God turned his head and the progenitor's sword stabbed into his neck. He let out a grating sound as his eyeless eyes stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin stared at the sole true God. The sole true God stared back, not saying a word. In the distance, Yen Gang was grabbed by Qing Wang, and he stared blankly as Lu Yin stabbed the sole true God's neck. It was all over. They were going to die. The heavenly hound howled. No matter how strong it was, it couldn't bear being attacked by so many people for so long, and it spat out blood. The Forgotten Ruins God and Wang Xiaoyu were also in a sorry state as they hid behind the heavenly hound. In another direction, Black Wuxian's expression was ferocious. Black lines pierced through the void from his pupils as he tried to block Lu Yin's divine seal catalog and escape. But against Wu Tian Hongyan Mavis and the others from the 3 realms 6 Daos, he couldn't escape at all. Helpless, he could only consume his life force. He was a life form from the consciousness universe, and his consciousness had reached the celestial level, which was equivalent to the primordial realm. Even though he wasn't considered strong in this battle, the progenitor and Lu Yin were both being held back by the sole true God. He was confident that he could escape. His consciousness spread out as Black Wuxian continued to flee into the distance. Lu Yin stared at the sole true God. You won't say anything even when you're about to die? The one who killed me wasn't you, it was Tai Hong. The sole true God's eyes recovered as he looked at the progenitor. You suppressed the sequence's string and protected the heaven's origin universe. Tai Hong didn't have it easy. If not for her, I could have killed my way into Immemorial City. Sometimes it's easier to die than to live. You and I both underestimated Tai Hong. The progenitor's body trembled and his gaze became complicated. I never underestimated her. The sole true God closed his eyes. Before I die, I'll show you my true power. The progenitor's expression changed. Juzi, retreat. The one true God suddenly opened his eyes and waved his right index finger. With 2 clangs, he broke the primogenitor's sword. His finger then streaked across the void, causing the broken sword to shoot back towards the primogenitor and Lu Yin. The 2 broken sword blades pierced through the 6 paths of reincarnation. Lu Yin saw the tip of the sword stabbing towards him, and he tried to use a reverse step to avoid it. However, in that instant the sword pierced through his shoulder and blood splattered across space. Lu Yin was stunned. How could it be so fast? Around him, a small boat of flowing light appeared and reversed for a second. In front of his eyes, the tip of the sword was descending. Even though he had turned around for a second, he still couldn't avoid it. Instead, he felt the pain of the sword piercing into his body. Not only him, but the primogenitor's arm was also pierced by the sword. On the other side, the 6 paths of reincarnation world shot towards the only true God like countless golden light streams, penetrating through the only true God's body. The only true deity stood in the starry space. Each and every golden ray pierced through him. This was the last of the 6 paths of reincarnation's power. After such a long time, the 6 paths of reincarnation had been whittling away the only true deity's strength, but the 6 paths of reincarnation's power was also decreasing. There were no losses, and today, it had fallen to the point where the only true God could pierce through it. The Grand Empyrean had long foreseen this step, or rather this step was inevitable. Thus, she had left behind a final countermeasure within the 6 paths of reincarnation world. The condition for activating this countermeasure was for the only true God to forcefully break it. At this moment, the 6 paths of reincarnation world could already be forcefully broken. If the only true God forcefully broke it, the countermeasure would be enough to severely injure him. If the only true God didn't forcefully break it, the 6 paths of reincarnation world would eventually dissipate. The only true God would eventually lose most of his strength, but he could still cultivate it back. The Grand Empyrean had left this countermeasure for Lu Yin and the others. She believed that Lu Yin and the others could force the only true God to act before the 6 paths of reincarnation world dissipated. The only true God had seen this clearly, which was why he didn't forcefully break the 6 paths of reincarnation world when he could. This was because he would also be severely injured. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he wouldn't do this. Now, in the face of death, he could only act. However, he only had one chance to do so. Easily breaking the primogenitor's sword and piercing through the primogenitor and Lu Yin. This was the only true God's strength. However, this was also the final glory of his life. Primogenitor, do you still remember our agreement? The only true God's body was on the verge of collapse. The golden light had disappeared and he was walking towards death. The primogenitor looked at the only true God. Die at the hands of the enemy so that your body won't be eaten by the wild beasts. The only true God laughed, his mouth filled with blood. In that era, our enemies were the astral beasts. Countless powerful astral beasts were the rulers of the universe. You, I, and Tai Hong, we made an agreement that whoever died would have to be destroyed by the living so that their bodies wouldn't be eaten by the wild beast. Tai Hong's death is resplendent. I don't want to die too miserably. I hope that you will abide by the agreement. The primogenitor raised his hand, and the other 2 intact primogenitor swords flew over to him. All right. He then looked at the only true God and said to Lu Yin, Zhuzi, leave this to me. I won't let him leave alive. Lu Yin nodded and didn't refuse. At this moment, the only true God's body was basically crippled. Lu Yin could sense that he would definitely die. The wish of the older generation would be fulfilled by them. The primogenitor clearly had something to say to the only true God. Lu Yin looked at He Wuxian. The endless road stretched out, and even Hongyan Mavis couldn't catch up to Wu Tian, who had come out of the God Sealing Catalog. Lu Yin took a step forward and arrived beneath the Divine Seal Catalog. The starry sky in his heart extended towards He Wuxian. A similar scene occurred. Lu Yin could clearly see He Wuxian, but he couldn't catch up to him. He Wuxian looked back, and when he saw Lu Yin, he panicked. However, Endless Path had already been released and he heaved a sigh of relief. Master Lu, if Lord Eternity dies, I will also change my name and not become enemies with the Tianyuan universe. Please let me off this once. Lu Yin looked at He Wuxian. You want to return to the consciousness universe? He Wuxian didn't know where to go. He was a traitor of the consciousness universe, a traitor of the spiritualized universe, and a remnant of the Eternals. He had nowhere to go. Lu Yin's gaze was cold. Since you don't know where to go, then stay here. Then the consciousness planet in his heart trembled. A majestic consciousness extended through the starry sky towards He Wuxian. He Wuxian's eyes turned as he stared at Lu Yin. Master Lu, you can't stop me. None of you can stop my consciousness. If you attack me again, you will regret it. Suddenly his eyes widened. Impossible. In the starry sky, Lu Yin's consciousness planet's consciousness connected to the endless path. Then it followed the endless path towards He Wuxian. He Wuxian was stunned. Astral level. This was definitely a consciousness at the astral level. Someone in the Tianyuan universe had actually cultivated their consciousness to the astral level? How was this possible? Even Lu Yin couldn't do it. Furthermore, shouldn't his consciousness have been broken by the one true God? How could this be? It was precisely because Lu Yin's consciousness had been injured by the one true God following the turbid treasure that He Wuxian was confident that he could use the endless path to delay Lu Yin during the battle in Immemorial City. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so confident. Lu Yin had created too many miracles. Now, not only was Lu Yin's consciousness intact, but it was also majestic. Now, this was a familiar feeling. Bai Wuxian, you swallowed Bai Wuxian's consciousness. He Wuxian was shocked. Lu Yin frowned. He hadn't swallowed Bai Wuxian's consciousness. Bai Wuxian had willingly fused his consciousness into Lu Yin's consciousness planet, so how had He Wuxian sensed it? The power of consciousness was still power, so how could it be distinguished? Was it because of the consciousness universe's life forms? You swallowed Bai Wuxian's consciousness? Impossible. No life form can swallow the consciousness of the consciousness universe's life forms. There has never been such a thing. Spiritualized universes can't do it either. They can only destroy it. How did you do it? He Wuxian had suffered a huge blow, one that was far more severe than when the Eternals had been defeated. This was a blow to his understanding of life. It wasn't something that had happened in the outside world. It was like a person who had lived for so many years only to discover that he wasn't human. He Wuxian felt this way at the moment. It was absurd, unbelievable, and even terrifying. Lu Yin didn't care about what He Wuxian was thinking. His consciousness moved towards He Wuxian. This guy couldn't escape. The endless path could be extended because of the majestic consciousness. It allowed a person's consciousness to be extended endlessly. Once a person's consciousness caught up, the path would be broken. He Wuxian was terrified and in despair. Impossible. How can this be? This has never happened before. Master Lu, spare my life. Master Lu, I beg you, spare me, spare me. Lu Yin followed his consciousness and moved towards He Wuxian. He raised a hand and enveloped He Wuxian. Weren't you threatening me? He Wuxian begged, Master Lu, please spare me. I gave you a chance. If I hadn't given you a chance and used my full strength to kill you, you wouldn't have survived until now. Lu Yin looked at He Wuxian. Why did you give me 100,000 years back then? He Wuxian watched as Lu Yin drew closer and closer. That hand continued to envelop him, carrying with it a majestic consciousness. Endless despair caused his breathing to stagnate. Because of Bai Wuxian. Lu Yin stopped and stared at He Wuxian. Continue. He Wuxian was bitter. Firstly, I admired you. The one true God wanted us to find cultivators with innate gifts who were suitable to join the race. You were definitely the most talented, and the one true God wanted to pull you into the race at that time. Secondly, it was also because of Bai Wuxian. When we betrayed the consciousness universe, I owed her a life. She was the one who used that life to exchange for 100,000 years of life for you. She allowed me to give you a chance to live. Lu Yin stared at He Wuxian in a daze. Boundless consciousness whistled around him, and he felt like he was seeing Luotian again. Her every frown and smile, as well as her beautiful dance, were deeply engraved in his mind. He couldn't describe what he was feeling. Bai Wuxian was an enemy of the human race, and she possessed the list of immortals. She had caused too much damage to the human race, and from Lu Yin's standpoint he should have killed her. However, Bai Wuxian had saved him more than once. Her feelings weighed heavily on Lu Yin's heart. Chapter 3385. Your consciousness can't be devoured? Black Wuxian said bitterly, definitely not. If she wasn't willing, Master Lu, you wouldn't have been able to obtain her consciousness. Without her consciousness, He didn't know if he hated Bai Wuxian or his own bad luck. If not for Bai Wuxian's consciousness, he could have escaped. However, it was thanks to Bai Wuxian that he hadn't died in the consciousness universe. What was going on? Why did Bai Wuxian care so much about Lu Yin? He could never understand human emotions. Just like how Bai Wuxian couldn't understand why he had been affected by Ming Yan's emotions, which had led to the current situation. Lu Yin lowered his hand. Black Wuxian relaxed. Thank you for not killing me, Master Lu. Lu Yin looked down at Black Wuxian. Who said I wasn't going to kill you? Black Wuxian was stunned, and before he could react, a planet exploded in front of him. Sirius's power combined with the limits of a living being tore Black Wuxian's body to shreds. Black Wuxian's consciousness spread out, and his voice was filled with hatred. Lu Yin, you will die a horrible death. One day, you will die at the hands of the spiritualized universe and the consciousness universe. You will die a horrible death. Lu Yin's consciousness swept out and rushed towards Black Wuxian's consciousness. Black Wuxian's consciousness frantically tried to escape. But it was impossible. The consciousness planet descended like a whirlpool that continuously devoured Black Wuxian's consciousness. Black Wuxian was shocked. The consciousness of the consciousness universe's life forms should not be devoured, but you are an exception. Lu Yin, you are the consciousness universe's greatest enemy, and you are even more of a threat than the spiritualized universe. Lu Yin, one day your consciousness will be destroyed and you will die a horrible death. Black Wuxian's voice gradually weakened as his consciousness was devoured by the consciousness planet. The consciousness life and thoughts vanished the moment his consciousness was devoured, leaving behind only Lu Yin's purest consciousness. Lu Yin had killed Black Wuxian not only because of their different standpoints, but also because he wanted to try and see if he could steal the consciousness of the consciousness universe's life forms. From the results he could. By Wuxian's sacrifice gave Lu Yin a possibility to limitlessly strengthen his consciousness. Lu Yin could strengthen his consciousness by stealing life forms from the consciousness universe. To the consciousness universe he was its greatest enemy, as the spiritualized universe could only be destroyed, not devoured. When Black Wuxian's consciousness completely dissipated, Lu Yin stood in space. The planet had become much larger. How terrifying. His consciousness had swelled up by a lot. It was completely at the level of the primordial realm. No, it should be said that it was at the level of the bitter disaster realm. On his consciousness planet, it was equivalent to the starry sky realm. He had not reached the level of tribulation transcendence. He had not even reached the primordial realm, but his consciousness had reached it ahead of time. This was the shortcut. The consciousness universe could give him unlimited consciousness, and the spiritualized universe could give him unlimited sequence precepts. These two universes seemed to have become his supplements. Looking back, the only true God was constantly being injured by the primogenitor. He was getting closer and closer to death. He had no ability to resist at all. On the other side, the Azure King was knocked down by a single punch from Lu Yuan. He was still holding Yan Gang in his hand. The surrounding insects were almost completely wiped out. In a battle of this level, it didn't matter how many insects there were. Yan Gang coughed out a mouthful of blood. Even though he was protected by the Azure King, just a little bit of the remaining power was enough to kill him. His right leg was gone. Just now it had been grazed by the residual power. Blood flowed continuously and the pain seeped into his bone marrow. He regretted it, extremely regretted it. He should have handed the hive over. Sensing something, he looked into the distance. At that moment Lu Yin was also looking at him. Time seemed to turn back 100 years. They had both been on Earth at that time, and Yan Gang had looked down on Lu Yin with a sense of superiority. He had treated Lu Yin as a native that could be easily crushed. 100 years passed quickly. Yan Gang had never imagined that they would meet again in such a manner. He looked at Lu Yin with pleading eyes. He wanted to live, not die. Lu Yin looked at Yan Gang as well. Everything that had happened on Earth flashed through his mind. 100 years had been like this. What about 1,000 years? 10,000 years? 100,000 years? 1,000,000 years? 1,000,000,000,000 years? What would happen to the universe? He would become a legend in the end. He would experience too much after parting. Bang! The Azure King's head was smashed by Hongyan Mavis, and he spat out a mouthful of blood onto Yan Gang's face. The scorching blood melted Yan Gang's skin and he wailed, "Kill me! Kill me!" It was not that he did not fear death, but the pain made him want to die. The Azure King casually smashed Yan Gang's head. This person was no longer of any value. Even the only true God was about to meet his end. Lu Yuan and Hongyan Mavis charged over. The Azure King's gaze relaxed. "I want to buy my own life." Lu Yuan and Hongyan Mavis subconsciously stopped and surrounded the Azure King. "Buy your own life?" Azure King turned to look at Lu Yin and slowly said, "I know that you view us as enemies, but we have never intended to be your enemy. The insects reproduce instinctively. If you don't want to, I can kill all of them and give you the hive." Lu Yin raised his brows. "You really want to live?" After entering Furball's body, Lu Yin knew that the most important thing for Xianxia was to survive. This was not just an instinct but also an order from the Immortal Master. When the Immortal Master had sent the hive into the heaven's origin universe, the only order he had given was to survive. Xianxia faithfully carried out the Immortal Master's orders. The Azure King respectfully said, "Master Lu, please give me a chance to live. I am willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I have a secret that can be exchanged for your life." Lu Yin laughed. "Your secret is worthless to me. You are not the only one. If Xianxia wants to live, kill him." The ancestor of giants appeared from behind. His right arm shattered as he grabbed at the Azure King with his left hand. Lu Yin didn't have time to waste with the Azure King. The ancestor was about to finish and he planned to attack the heavenly hound. This dog was really resilient, as expected of a creature from before the human civilization. The Azure King dodged the Ancestor of Giants' attack and shouted, "With Master Lu's strength, Xianxia won't be able to escape no matter how strong she is. It is normal for you to obtain other Xianxia, but my secret is more valuable than all of them. If Master Lu is willing, I can tell you. Please give me a chance." Lu Yin ignored him and attacked the Heavenly Hound. The Azure King shouted, "The only true God is not here." Lu Yin paused and looked at the Azure King in shock. "What did you say?" Suddenly, Azure King's divine power surged, and his expression changed drastically as he looked at the only true God. The only true God's gaze was bone-chilling. He didn't expect his secret to be seen through by an insect. He also saw the scene of the Azure King killing Yan Gang, but he didn't expect to be fooled for so long. This insect couldn't be controlled by Yan Gang at all. Not only that, but it had also discovered his secret. The Azure King suppressed his divine power and shouted, "Master Lu, save me. The only true God is not here." Lu Yin quickly appeared beside the Azure King and pressed down on him, wanting to absorb his divine power. But it was too late. The divine power exploded from the Azure King's body, and not only did it shatter him, but it also injured Lu Yin. Lu Yin took a few steps back and looked at the only true God in the distance. The ancestor was shocked. "What do you mean? Ernal, what did you do?" The only true God shook his head. "I didn't expect an insect to see through me. You were right to be afraid of the hive. Be careful, this insect might turn around and become the host. The threat is greater than the spiritualized universe." The ancestor stared at the only true God. He hadn't seen wrongly, and the only true God was here. But what did he mean by that? Did he admit to what the insect said? Lu Yin looked at the only true God and thought quickly before blurting out, "A spiritual seed bestowed by the heavens." The only true God praised, "Smart Lu Yin. The Tianyuan universe is yours. I lost to you once here. See you in the spiritualized universe." Then he looked at the ancestor. "Tai Chu, didn't you realize that my divine power doesn't exist?" The ancestor stared at the only true God. He didn't realize that even if the only true God didn't use his divine power, he was still extremely powerful. The only true God's divine power wasn't in this body. He had gone to the spiritualized universe with the spiritual seed bestowed by the heavens. But how did he go? Meng Sang. Lu Yin clenched his fist. It was Meng Sang, but how did he do it? Meng Sang didn't know. From the beginning, the only true God had led He Wuxian and the rest to avoid Progenitor Chen's pursuit. But in fact, whether it was the Forgotten Ruins God or Progenitor Chen, they were just bait to divert everyone's attention. He made Lu Yin and the rest think that he was with the Forgotten Ruins God, and in fact they were. Otherwise, they wouldn't have discovered Progenitor Chen's pursuit. However, he had used his divine power to carry the turbid spiritual seed that was bestowed by the heavens. He had found Meng Sang at some point in time, and had followed her out of the Tianyuan universe to the spiritualized universe without Meng Sang noticing. Other than Meng Sang, there was no one else. After the spiritualized universe invaded the Tianyuan universe, Meng Sang was the only one who built the springboard and left. As for whether Meng Sang knew, Lu Yin wasn't sure. Logically speaking, she should know, but with the only true God's power, it wasn't impossible for Meng Sang to not notice. But the only true God in front of him was definitely powerful. How did he transfer his divine power? Why did he transfer it? To get rid of the 6 paths of reincarnation? Yes, this was the only way to get rid of the 6 paths of reincarnation and leave the Tianyuan universe. Under the premise that no one knew, he could cultivate again in the spiritualized universe. It wasn't considered cultivating again. His divine power would follow him, and his power would increase very quickly. If not for the Qing King's reminder, no one would know about this. Lu Yin stared at the only true God. He was sure that Meng Sang didn't know because the only true God who left with him was very weak. In this state, the only true God couldn't let anyone know. The only true God looked deeply at Lu Yin. "Do you still remember what I told you before? Master Lu, let's meet again in the spiritualized universe." After he finished speaking, he took out the hive from his cosmic ring. "This is a parting gift for you." The hive continued to flicker in the void under the only true God's power, like a star in the night sky flying into the distance. Chapter 3386. Lu Yin and the others subconsciously looked at the hive. Around the one true God, countless sword shadows shone brightly and flew in the opposite direction of the hive. That direction was the Heavenly Hound, the Forgotten Ruins deity, and Wang Xiaoyu. Endless sword shadows swept through the void like fragments of time. They directly pierced through Celestial Lord Battle God, Wood God and the others, but they were not harmed at all. At the same time they pierced through Heavenly Hound. Finally they pierced through Wang Xiaoyu and Wang Xiaoyu. Lu Yin abruptly turned around and stared blankly. Heavenly Lord Victor and Wood God looked at their own bodies. They didn't know what had happened. They didn't feel anything in that instant, but they had been penetrated. As for the God of Forgetting Ruins and Wang Xiaoyu, they slowly disappeared. The only true God surveyed his surroundings. Tianyuan Cosmos, we Eternals will return. After saying this, his body exploded. Fortunately, the primogenitor had made preparations and had suppressed the might of the sole true divinity's explosion to the limit. Otherwise, this destructive force would have been enough to kill an ancestor, and this spacetime would have been finished. The only true God's body was dead, completely dead. If not for the Green King, everyone would have thought that the only true God was dead. However, he did not die. He would reappear in a different form. His origin power, the godly power, was still there. Whether it was the three ultimate skills of a true god or the turbid treasure, he had them all. Furthermore, because of the turbid treasure bestowed by the heavens, he had obtained the power to spiritualize the universe. Lu Yin now understood why the one true God was willing to betray Xianxia and be viewed as an enemy by the spiritualized universe in order to steal Xianxia's turbid treasure. The turbid treasure bestowed by the heavens was too important to him. Perhaps he had thought of this the moment he was sealed by the 6 paths of reincarnation. Only through rebirth could he break free from the Grand Emperor's 6 paths of reincarnation. Xianxia had long been targeted by him. There was also the Forgotten Ruins deity and Wang Xiaoyu. What was up with them? Lu Yin looked over. Heavenly Lord Victorious Battle, Wood God and Heavenly Hound were still there. Only these 2 women had disappeared. They didn't die, but rather were sent away by the only true deity. But why? Why did the one true God care so much about them? He Wuxian was dead, Tiango was going to die as well. Azure King and the Eternals' 3 pillars and Lu Hao had all died, but the sole true God didn't seem to care that much. He only cared about these 2 women. There must be something wrong with these 2 women. This was especially true for Wang Xiaoyu. They could all tell that there was a problem with Wang Xiaoyu's betrayal of the 5th mainland. Wang Xiaoyu herself was aware of this, yet she still followed the sole true God and the others. The sole true God also did not attack her. All signs indicated that there was a big problem behind these 2 women. Progenitor Qin arrived and looked around, but he didn't see Wang Xiaoyu anywhere. He quickly went to Lu Yin and asked, Master Lu, where's Wang Xiaoyu? Lu Yin looked at Progenitor Qin. Why are you suddenly here? I can't sense Wang Miao Miao's aura, Ancestor Qin said. Lu Yin's heart sank. Not only had he sent the Forgotten Ruins deity and the others away, but he had also erased the power that Progenitor Qin had left behind in her body. Before the one true God's body had died, he had deliberately used the hive to divert their attention in order to help the Forgotten Ruins deity and the others escape. What exactly was the secret that they were hiding? Not long after, the insect nest was brought over by the ancestor of the giants. He went to chase after the insect nest. Among those present, the hidden danger that the sole true God had left behind in the Tianyuan universe had been resolved. Blacklist God and Azure King were both dead, and although the Forgetful Ruins God and Wang Xiaoyu had been sent away, they would not be able to cause any big waves for the time being. They definitely represented some sort of secret that Lu Yin had no clue about. The only thing left was the Heavenly Hound. And the reason why they were able to find the one true God and the others was because they had schemed against them. Tingu. In the Battle of Immemorial City, the only true God and the others were able to escape because of the Heavenly Hound. This creature that had existed for longer than the entire history of mankind had finally met its end. The Heavenly Hound opened its eyes. Its body was in tatters, having endured too many attacks. It could withstand the attacks of the Celestial Champion Celestial and the attacks of the 3 realms and 6 paths, but there was a limit. During the battle at Immemorial City, it had already reached its limit in order to escape with the bone galleys. Now, against the above heaven sect's well-prepared methods, the Heavenly Hound could not withstand them. Lu Yin stood in front of the Heavenly Hound. Can you speak or not? The Heavenly Hound's eyes were wide open and blood flowed from the corners of its eyes. It did not look at Lu Yin, but rather at the stone orb with a look of desire. The desolate god walked over with the stone orb and pushed it in front of the Heavenly Hound. The heavenly hound raised its head with difficulty, wanting to approach the stone orb. Lu Yin looked at the desolate god. The desolate god stood beside the stone orb and faced the heavenly hound. In this battle it had also attacked the heavenly hound. However, regardless of whether it faced the desolate god or the other above heaven sect experts, the heavenly hound only stood in front of the Forgotten Ruins god and the others. He was not surprised to see the desolate god. Chaos cannot return. It died a long time ago, the desolate god said. The heavenly hound's eyes were ferocious as it stared at the desolate god and bared its teeth. The desolate god looked at the heavenly hound. Back then I asked you why you followed the Eternal. You have yet to answer me. The heavenly hound retracted its gaze and lowered its head to stare at the stone orb. No matter what the desolate god said, the heavenly hound ignored it. In the end, the heavenly hound hugged the stone orb and died. Watching the heavenly hound die was like the end of an era. Back then the Eternals had been at their peak. The 7 sky gods, the 3 pillars, the 6 boundless gods, the true god guards, the progenitor realm corpse kings and so on had suppressed the humans until they could not breathe. Now all of this had become history. One by one they left. Lu Yin stood in the starry sky thinking about something. The primogenitor also returned to Immemorial City. Before he left, he patted Lu Yin's shoulder. Zhuzi, we should be glad. At least we know that the Eternals are not dead and that Wang Miao Miao and the others have secrets. If not for this battle we would not have known any of this and we would not have cared. You have done very well. No one can control everything. I did not expect the Eternals to have such a move and neglected his divine power. What you did not do or think of, there will always be others who can fill in the gaps. Don't give yourself too much pressure. You are the one who saved the Tianyuan universe. After the primogenitor left, Mr. Mu arrived. Master, why do you think people want to see the future? Lu Yin looked at the starry sky and asked. He did not know what he was thinking. Was he unwilling? That was not the case. The one true God had lived for so many years, and he was already very lucky to be able to defeat the Eternals. He had gathered the resources of the entire Tianyuan universe to defeat the first wave of enemies from the spiritualized universe. He was also very lucky. Why should he take all the good things? But at this moment he was confused. Regardless of whether they were friends or enemies, they disappeared one by one, taking away the imprint that belonged to him. Although he was still very young, he always felt that his existence was being diluted. Everyone was born with a mission. If his mission ended, would he still exist? This universe had karma. If he ended the karma brought about by the karma, then would he belong to the next karma? Or the karma that had already ended? If this karma ended, would he still exist? Humans were too insignificant compared to the universe. So what if he stepped into the eternal realm? Wasn't he still living in the universe? What was the meaning of cultivation? When an ordinary person died, another related person would be born. Was this reincarnation? Reincarnation was not the reincarnation of life, but the reincarnation of karma. Humans were just a part of the reincarnation of karma. That was all. Under Lu Yin's seemingly calm appearance, his thoughts were like an ocean in reverse, constantly churning. The sound of the flute came from Mr. Mu. He did not answer but used the flute to calm Lu Yin's heart. Lu Yin closed his eyes and did not think about anything. His mind was empty as he sensed the starry sky of the universe. Mr. Mu's flute echoed in the starry sky. After an unknown period of time the flute stopped. Lu Yin opened his eyes and let out a long breath. Thank you, Master. Mr. Mu looked at Lu Yin with a complicated expression. Perhaps the eternal immortality saved you. Lu Yin was surprised, not understanding what Mr. Mu meant. Mr. Mu sighed. You've gone mad. Lu Yin retracted his gaze. Was that so? Yes, he did not know what he was thinking just now. Little 7 Master has also gone mad. In the final battle I lost. I did not lose to an old enemy, but to an omnipotent existence. At that time I also asked myself what was my persistence? What was the point? In the end it was just another person's game. Master has also been confused, frustrated and even had thoughts of dying. Mr. Mu looked at Lu Yin. But in the end I figured it out and came to this universe to help Tai Chu stabilize the Mirage domain. Faced with the eternal realm in this universe, I also saved Tai Chu and took you as my disciples. I broke the game and helped you cultivate. Have you ever seen Master's frustration? How did Master figure it out? Lu Yin asked. Mr. Mu smiled. He rarely smiled and could recall it all. Even if you're an Eternal Realm expert, aren't you also a part of the game? Lu Yin looked at him silently. In a game of chess pieces are not enough. There must be a chess player. Aren't chess players also a part of the game? Can a chess player get rid of the game? Then he is not a chess player. It's the same for an Eternal Realm expert. You think he's making the game, but in my opinion he's making the karma. Lu Yin's eyes widened. Making the karma? Mr. Mu nodded. An Eternal Realm expert is very strong, invincible, and can kill anyone. But why is there a game? Is it boring? Maybe, but in my opinion it's more about making the karma. In this game, an Eternal Realm expert is worse off than us. We're passive participants, but they have to create a game and actively participate. The outcome is uncertain. Because they're limited by karma, they're worse off than us. Since they're worse off than us, why bother whether this is a game or not? Whether it's a game created by an Eternal Realm expert, the laws of the universe, or karma, just let it be. Your birth was given to you by the universe. What's wrong with playing a game with it? Just treat it as being filial to the laws of the universe. You can be filial to your parents and elders. In this universe, aren't you the greatest elder? Lu Yin stared at Mr. Mu in a daze. Was there such a saying? Pa, what's wrong? Are you a rebel? Lu Yin took a deep breath and smiled happily. Master, I'm very lucky to be your disciple. Mr. Mu smiled and nodded. I'm also very lucky to have a disciple like you. Chapter 3387. The Boundless Battlefield, the Great Stone Void. Everyone here was carrying a stone on their back. This was because this spacetime had given birth to sequence law experts before. Because they had reversed the natural order, they had been obliterated by the natural order, causing the Great Stone Void to become chaotic. Killing intent constantly descended. Only by carrying a stone inscribed with the power of the progenitor realm would one be able to resist the killing intent that violated the natural order. There used to be a lot of people in Dashikong, but now there was almost no one left. After the Eternals were defeated, Dashikong's people moved to another parallel universe. No one was willing to carry a rock for the rest of their life. Walking outside the Great Stone Sky Imperial Palace, Tuo Lin wiped the sweat off his forehead. The statue of Lu Yin on his back was very heavy. Xiaoyu, we are here. This is the Great Stone Sky Imperial Palace where Master once came and carried the stone on his back. It is said that Master was once here. The stone that Master once carried? I don't know either. We'll have to look for it. Don't worry, we'll definitely find it. We'll see Master's footprints. When Lu Yin stepped into the Imperial Palace, he saw that this place had once been filled with song and dance. Even though the Great Stone Emperor had been one of the endless battlefields at that time and had fought to the death against the Eternals, the Imperial Palace had still been extremely prosperous. Lu Yin had been puzzled at the time, and it was only later that he learned that the Great Stone Emperor had been preparing to feign death and escape from the Great Stone Emperor. He could let go of everything about Dashikong. There was no one guarding the Imperial Palace. Tuo Lin entered and searched. After a few days he finally found the stone pit. This was the place where Lu Yin had chosen the stones under the guidance of the Great Stone Emperor. At this moment there were many people around the stone pit, including a tour guide. Everyone, please take a look. This is the stone pit of Dashikong. The stones on your heads came from here. We have to return them after we leave. The tour guide shouted and introduced everything about Dashikong. Master Lu, did you choose this stone to participate in the Great Stone Sky Battlefield? That's right. It's here. Where are the stones that Master Lu used? Let us see. That's right, where are the stones used by Master Lu? Everyone, please calm down. The stone that Master Lu used has long been destroyed in the war. Even with Master Lu's strength, he was unable to protect the stone. One can imagine how intense the battle was. It is said that not only were there ancestor realm corpse kings and the bearer of the art of feeding, there was also the captain of the true god guards. Nonsense. Dashikong is one of the gathering points of the endless battlefield. Of course it's intense. Listening to the conversation between the tour guide and the crowd, Tuo Lin didn't approach. He was also listening. It was such a wonderful thing to be able to hear his master's legendary story everywhere. That's right. Master had a hard time. Every battle he fought was very difficult. What? You want to write Master's biography? That's great, I've thought of it too. Xiaoyu, our minds are really connected and we've thought of the same thing. Don't worry. When they leave we'll go and take a look. Master left his footprints there. A familiar aura? Is it an old friend of yours? Forget it, Master's footprints are more important. That's right, I don't want to look for it either. There's nothing that can disturb us from walking the path that Master has taken every time. Beside the stone pit, Yulong looked around. Strange, there was a familiar aura. What was going on? Ever since the insectoid nest was being hunted down by the Above Heaven sect, he had been participating in all kinds of traveling. He was afraid that the insectoids would catch up to him. This endless battlefield was one of the places that he constantly traveled to. He had already been here 3 times. De Shirkong had also been here twice. However, it was not enough. It was still not enough. The sect above heaven was like the sun in the sky. He didn't dare to breed insects now. He could only wait. Only when there were no more insects in the sect above heaven would he be able to find a place to develop in peace. The time will come. It will. Not long after the group of people left, Tuo Lin walked to the side of the stone pit happily. We're here. Xiaoyu, where do you think Master will choose the stone? Yes, I think so too. You can feel Master's aura? That's great. You're getting closer and closer to Master. Don't worry, when we return to the Above Heaven sect, Master will be very happy to accept you as a disciple. You'll be 3rd junior sister. After all, there's still a senior brother above you, and that's we can. Don't say that. Junior brother has his strong points. Master has seen them, but we haven't. This means that we haven't cultivated enough. We must work hard. You too. Everyone should work hard. They stayed beside the stone pit for a few days. During this time, another group of people traveled here. Tuo Lin avoided them, unwilling to interact with the crowd. After that group of people left, Tuo Lin also left. He felt that Master's statue on his back had become even heavier. Lu Yin arrived on Earth in the primordial space. He had come not only to meet old friends, but also to understand Hun Ji's situation. After cultivating in outer space for so many years, he had never seen such a creature outside of Earth. It had to be related to Earth. Even though Earth was so close to the Above Heaven sect, Lu Yin had never been here before. Coincidentally, Zhang Dingtian and Bai Shui were also on Earth. Lu Yin's arrival was beyond their expectations. Even though the interval between each meeting was not long, Lu Yin's leap was so fast that it was unimaginable. It made them feel as if Lu Yin was too far away. Aside from these people, Zhou Xian's daughter Zhou Sisi had also brought her son and husband along. Master Lu. Master Lu. Uncle Lu. Everyone was a little nervous. Although they knew that Lu Yin was not high and mighty, this change in status was real. Even Zhou Xian was not as relaxed as before. Zhou Sisi was even more so. In the past she could act coquettishly with Lu Yin, but now she was very reserved. Lu Yin chatted with them for a while before they gradually relaxed. Lu Yin was still the same Lu Yin. Karma and effect would eventually lead to the end. Earth was Lu Yin's starting point. He did not know where his end was, but perhaps it was also on Earth. In a city not too far away, Lu Xiaoga had also returned. He was sitting in a bar, swirling his glass as he listened to the noisy singing and laughing. Who would remember him now? He had once been able to compete with Lu Yin, but now he did not even have the right to enter the Above the Sky sect. However, this was just as well. He looked at his palm. Night King Zhenwu, if you were still alive, I wonder what would have happened. After catching up with Zhou Xian and the others, Lu Yin asked them to help him investigate Earth's legends about Huanji. There were many legends about Huanji on Earth. Lu Yin did not ask the Above the Sky sect to interfere, as he did not want to cause too much of a commotion. Huanji should be dead, but if he was not, then where was he now? Had he gone to another universe? No one knew. Investigating Huanji was also for the sake of peace. Lu Yin completely relaxed on Earth for a period of time. He was like a normal person lying on the beach and looking at the sea. He suddenly thought of Bai Qian. She had been captured by the Eternals in the hyperspace, and he had not been able to find her after that. She was probably dead. The two of them had been plotting against he ran on the beach, and the scenes from the past kept replaying in his mind. Although it had only been 100 years, too many things had happened. Without these 100 years, what would the history of the Tianyuan universe have been like? After a period of time, Zhou Xian and the others organized all the legends about Huanji and told them to Lu Yin. Most of these legends were illusory and fabricated, but there was one that caught Lu Yin's attention. The divine dragon swung its tail, roamed the stars and escaped at the end of the year. These short words came from a tortoise shell and they were the most ancient characters. This tortoise shell has a long history that surpasses the history of any known civilization. It's said to have come from a civilization that was even more ancient than that, Zhou Xian said. Every once in a while, Earth would experience the extinction of a civilization. Because of this, the Hidden Earth sect would deliberately attack other planets with primeval surnames to prevent Earth from being noticed, as it was too outrageous. However, to this day no one knew the reason for the extinction of a civilization. The Hidden Earth sect had approached Lu Yin, hoping that he could help Earth. Lu Yin had also asked Lu Bujing to investigate, but he had not been able to find anything. Zhou Xian's words implied that this tortoise shell belonged to a civilization that had once been extinct. As for how long ago it had been, no one knew. What does that mean? Lu Yin asked. Zhou Xian replied, it means that the divine dragon roamed the stars before finally disappearing on Jupiter. Lu Yin was surprised. Jupiter? Yes, that's Jupiter. Lu Yin looked up at the sky and saw Jupiter. It was Jupiter again. He knew that Jupiter was very special, but it was no secret to him at this point. Jupiter could travel to the cosmic tree domain because of the existence of spacetime cracks. It was similar to how Shenwu continent could travel to the three monarch spacetime continuum. As for the power inside Jupiter, it came from the Hidden Earth sect, a source box array that had once existed, so it was no big deal. The Hidden Earth sect's existence was to prevent civilizations from being wiped out, and people were constantly being guided away from Jupiter. Jupiter's secrets had long since been seen through. Now it was actually connected to Huangji. Could it be that Jupiter was not only connected to the cosmic tree domain, but also to other universes? That couldn't be. Thank you. I'll take my leave now. Lu Yin left Earth and arrived outside Jupiter in a single step. The Hidden Earth sect's people had already returned to Earth, and this place was now empty. Descending on Jupiter, Lu Yin went to the place where the Hidden Earth sect's people had once stayed. There were still traces left behind. With a single thought, Lu Yin understood the entire situation on Jupiter. He had not paid much attention to this place before, but now he had discovered something that caused his body to disappear. It was an altar, a very ordinary and ancient altar. Because Earth was very close to the above heaven sect and Jupiter was the same. With Lu Yin's strength he could easily see through the surroundings. He had seen this altar more than once, but he had not discovered anything special about it. He had originally thought that it had been built by the Hidden Earth sect. Now that he had combined this information with Huangji, he immediately discovered that something was different. There was an empty space on the altar that was just the right size to place the stone orb. There were also 4 stone pillars around the altar that were carved into the shape of dragons. He remembered that the first time he had seen this altar he had not paid much attention to it because of the dragon pillars. There were too many buildings on Earth with dragon carvings, which was why he had thought that it had been built by the Hidden Earth sect. Now that he thought about it, that might not have been the case. Lu Yin looked at Earth and could easily find someone from the Hidden Earth sect to ask. He was on Jupiter, but his voice rang out in the ears of a man who owned a grocery store on Earth. Why was the Hidden Earth sect's people on Jupiter? Chapter 3388. The man was confused at first, but his expression quickly changed as he bowed respectfully. Jupiter has a source box array that distorts space and time. The first batch of Earth informants saw an altar when they entered, and the carvings on it were the same as those on Earth. They guessed that it was once related to Earth, so they hid it on Jupiter. Lu Yin looked at the altar in front of him, lost in thought as he stared at the dragon carvings. The man who opened the grocery store just stood there and didn't move. He was afraid that he would miss something. The people around him were confused and they all pointed at him. Only the man himself was excited. How many people in the universe could speak to Lu Yin? His life had been worth it. On Jupiter, Lu Yin took out the stone orb and placed it in an empty spot. The stone orb trembled, and then the carvings on its surface seemed to come alive. The entire planet's airflow began to rotate, and it was immediately observed by Earth, attracting its attention. Lu Yin looked at the carvings on the stone orb, which had really come alive and exuded an ancient aura. This aura was compatible with the Tianyuan universe, but it was also different. More accurately, it was different from Lu Yin's own aura. When chaos had existed, there had been no one in the Tianyuan universe. Perhaps humans did not even exist, but its aura covered the entire Tianyuan universe and it was the ruler of an era. After chaos came the primogenitor and after that came Lu Yin. When Chaos's aura appeared, the primogenitor as well as Mr. Mu sensed it from beneath Immemorial City. Even though Chaos's aura was not strong, it was still just a sacrificial item. No one disturbed Lu Yin. Lu Yin stood in front of the altar and walked up step by step. He raised his hand and pressed it against the stone orb. A roar entered his ears and he dreamt of ancient times. In the vast expanse of space, he saw a divine dragon that stretched out endlessly, exuding an incomparably powerful aura. Every movement of the divine dragon was imprinted in Lu Yin's mind, and he seemed to hear and feel something. At that moment, not only him but everyone on Earth also froze as the image of the divine dragon appeared before their eyes. Even in the parallel universe of White Cloud City, where Jiang Feng could not see anything, the image of the divine dragon appeared in the darkness, its claws tearing through the darkness to guide the light. The image of the divine dragon only appeared for a moment. Lu Yin understood that the reason why Earth's civilization was constantly reincarnating was because of chaos. Earth should be the birthplace of chaos, even though this planet was very small. Chaos had left its power on Earth and Jupiter, which could be obtained through sacrifices. It was far more than what could be obtained in other regions of the Tianyuan universe. This was also why Earthlings were so talented. As long as the conditions were right, Earthlings could cultivate much faster than others. However, primal chaos had disappeared, and the power it had left behind would be activated under certain conditions. Perhaps it was time, or perhaps it was the emergence of a cultivation civilization on Earth, and so on. Lu Yin did not understand primal chaos, so he could not understand the composition of its power. The power of chaos did not flow from the outside world. Instead, it existed on Earth itself and in the bodies of everyone who lived on Earth. The calamity of a civilization's reincarnation was both a calamity for Earth and an opportunity to cultivate the power of chaos. Before ancient times, when there were no humans on Earth, there must have been creatures that cultivated the power of chaos. Those creatures should be the descendants of chaos. Lu Yin looked at Earth. This matter had been weighing on his mind for a long time, but he had never thought that it would be this reason. The power of chaos? Hunji was no weaker than the primogenitor. He had once dominated the entire Tianyuan universe. Was he dead or alive? If he was, where did he go after disappearing? Why did the stone dragons in the hive look so similar to primal chaos? Could primal chaos have encountered the immortal master? The higher one stood, the further one could see. In the past, Lu Yin had seen the competition between species. Now he could see the replacement of civilizations over time. He did not know what other civilizations existed before primal chaos, but he hoped that they would not appear. Once they did, it would be difficult to deal with them. After all, they had lived for so long that even if they were not immortal, they would be immortal. Right? Was it a coincidence that humans only appeared after primal chaos disappeared? If the stone orb was placed on the altar, it could suppress primal chaos's power and prevent Earth from experiencing another reincarnation calamity. Lu Yin wanted to return to the above heaven sect, but there was no point in going back. He might as well stay here and study primal chaos's power. Perhaps he could gain some inspiration. At the same time, the Forgotten Ruins god brought Wang Xiaoyu across countless parallel universes in search of something. After half a year, they finally arrived on a desolate planet. Wang Xiaoyu did not understand what the Forgotten Ruins god wanted to do. She was not surprised that the only true god had sent them away in the previous battle. Sigh, Lord Eternity ran away and the hive is finished. That interesting guy He Wuxian is dead. Needless to say, those from the spiritualized universe are either hiding, being captured, or dying. The Tianyuan universe is getting more and more boring. What do you think, Xiaoyu? The Forgotten Ruins god stretched and took off her veil. The flower tattoo left by progenitor Qin disappeared on her face. The disappearance of the tattoo meant that progenitor Qin could no longer find her. Wang Xiaoyu was calm. What are you doing here? The Forgotten Ruins god looked at her with a smile. Many interesting things have ended, but you are still here. Wang Xiaoyu and the Forgotten Ruins god looked at each other and did not speak. The Forgotten Ruins god walked around Wang Xiaoyu and praised. Xia Shang chased after you and refused to leave. She came behind Wang Xiaoyu, leaned close and whispered into her ear, "Tell me, what do you want?" Wang Xiaoyu's face was cold. "You don't trust me?" Of course I trust you." The god of Forgetful Ruins smiled and slowly walked to Wang Xiaoyu. She stared into her eyes and said, "For me, you betrayed the 5th mainland and started a war between the 5th and 6th mainland. You are known as the greatest trader in the history of the Fifth Mainland. You joined the battlefield on the backside of the starry sky of trees and became one of the 12 marquises. After you defeated your ancestor, you joined the True God Guard and became a captain. You never interfered in the battle against Xiaoxiang. You even lured him to his death. Pete, everything you've done has made the patriarch trust you. Wang Xiaoyu's gaze swept past the god of oblivion and looked into the distance. There were countless strange bugs. They were not born from the hive but the bugs of the planet itself. They were disgusting and there were many of them, but they were not powerful. Those bugs were besieging a base. The base came from a neighboring planet. That planet had developed technology and built a base on this planet. They fought with the bugs and wanted to occupy this planet. There's nothing to say. I have no feelings for Xiaoxiang. Whether he dies or not has nothing to do with me. I'm only loyal to the clan and listen to the patriarch's orders, Wang Xiaoyu said coldly. The god of oblivion's lips curled up. At this moment she was extremely beautiful. Good girl. Cute girl, you're so obedient to the patriarch. The patriarch will not disappoint you. Let me show you something good. After saying that, she lowered her gaze and looked down. Looking down, her gaze turned cold. The planet shook. In the distance, in the base, many people panicked. Earthquake? Why didn't we predict it? Why are you panicking? It's just an earthquake, not a planet cracking. Stupid. With our methods, we should have predicted an earthquake in advance. If we didn't, there's only one possibility. It's not an earthquake. Then what is it? You look? Someone exclaimed. Everyone looked at the screen. Actually, they didn't need to look at the screen as they could clearly see what was happening outside. A blood-red sword emerged from the ground and floated in the sky. The blood-red light enveloped the entire planet, causing the bugs that were attacking the base to tremble and not dare to move. In the base, the screen exploded with a bang. Everyone looked at the blood-red sword in shock. How could this be? A sword? Wasn't that an ancient weapon? How could it appear here? A sword floating in the sky. What kind of power was that? Could cause the planet to shake. Even with their technology they couldn't do it. What was wrong with this universe? Not only were the people in the base shocked, but Wang Xiaoyu was even more shocked. She stared blankly at the blood-red sword. Was it? Yes, it was this sword. In the second battlefield, Lu Yin had killed Tianfeng. This was the sword that had appeared from Tianfeng's body, a blood-red sword. The blood-red sword slowly descended and landed in the god of oblivion's hand. Under the blood-red light, the god of oblivion's beautiful face was like a blood-red orchid blooming in the abyss. She was beautiful but also dangerous. She looked at Wang Xiaoyu with a smile and made a shushing gesture. Don't tell anyone. This is the Tian Yuan universe's biggest secret. This is the sword of that lord. Wang Xiaoyu looked at the god of oblivion in confusion. Which lord? The god of oblivion smiled. Who else could it be? Of course, it's the Eternal Realm Lord. With that, the sword suddenly landed on Wang Xiaoyu's neck and slashed horizontally. Blood splattered on the ground. More than 2 years had passed since the battle where the only true god was found. During this time, Progenitor Qin had been searching for the god of oblivion and Wang Xiaoyu, but there was no trace of them. The Tian Yuan universe was still gathering resources to create mechas, microarray weapons, and so on. They couldn't find any more bug nests. Lu Yin released Furball Xian to travel through the parallel universe. Firstly, he wanted to find bug nests. Secondly, he wanted to find people from the spiritualized universe. He couldn't find any bug nests, but he did find a few people from the spiritualized universe. However, compared to the spiritualized universe, there were too few people who had escaped. Those people were waiting for the second wave of reinforcements from the spiritualized universe. It was useless to search like this. Those bug nests that couldn't be found now must be hidden. The reason why he was sure that the bug nests hadn't been completely destroyed was because there were still progenitors following the bugs. The bugs would look for the nearest bug nests. Those bugs that were targeted by the heavenly sect had been searching for them purposefully. Also, Yu Leng hadn't been discovered yet. Lu Yin had given a strict order that the person who slaughtered the 6 direction training rites must be found. Now, the entire Tian Yuan universe seemed to be under his control, but there were still many hidden dangers. On this day, the Lady of Destiny suddenly found Lu Yin. The last bead has appeared. Lu Yin's eyes widened. He put away Furball Xian and hurriedly brought the Lady of Destiny to search. The Lady of Destiny had a bead chain with 13 beads. 2 of them had been given out. One was given to the Lu family and the other was given to a child. Chapter 3389. Lu Yin did not know who that child was, but that pearl had been given to little Shi by Zhao Ran. Logically speaking, that child should be Zhao Ran. However, Zhao Ran was the bitter calamity of unmarried. Would she appear as a child in that era? Lu Yin did not know and he could not be sure. Even Zhao Ran herself had forgotten. The other pearl that had been given to the Lu family was now in Bai Xian'er's hands. Lu Yin had once asked Fate's daughter and the others to use Fate to find the whereabouts of that pearl. At first it had been to find the Lu family, but after the Lu family returned, he had wanted to use that pearl to find Bai Xian'er, but he had not been able to find her. Who would have thought that after so many years the last pearl would be found? Unmarried, it had to be unmarried. Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He actually did not want to interact with unmarried. She was the ferryman of the river of time and represented the flow of time. Fate had ambushed unmarried and created a tributary of the river of time. He did not want to start all over again for fear of disturbing unmarried. However, he was not satisfied. Unmarried was one of the greatest hidden dangers of the Tianyuan universe. If he did not solve this problem, Lu Yin would not feel at ease going to the spiritualized universe. This was especially true when unmarried had sent the one true God, the President, and the above heavens sect to the Mirage domain. There had to be an ulterior motive, one that had nothing to do with her bitter calamity. Lu Yin had fought the President and the others in the Mirage domain, and the river of time had descended. There had to be something wrong with that small boat. He wanted to find an answer. The more he understood, the more clues he could find. Connecting all the clues together would give him an answer. There was something that had been in Lu Yin's heart for a very long time. He hoped to obtain new clues from unmarried, and only unmarried would give him new clues. Lu Yin returned to the starter space with Fate's daughter leading the way. He was shocked. The last pearl is here? Fate's daughter nodded. I don't know why, but it's in the starter space. The two headed towards the astral wilderness of the starter space. Lu Yin frowned. What did unmarried want? Why had she come to the starter space? The progenitor's sword was suppressed here and she could not use Papercut's power. Why had she come here? Far away on a meteorite in the astral wilderness, unmarried suddenly opened her eyes. Trouble. She got up, tore through the void and was about to leave. However, her movements paused as if she had misgivings and hesitated for a moment. Behind them, Lu Yin arrived and saw Wei Nu. The maiden that appeared before Lu Yin's eyes was no longer as radiant as before. She seemed to have been heavily injured and her face was deathly pale. Her eyes were bloodshot and she looked very weak. She looked at Lu Yin. You used this to find me, right? She took out a pearl and tossed it to him. Before coming here, Lu Yin had told Life's daughter to enter Mount Supreme. She couldn't be seen by Life's daughter, otherwise, Life's daughter could easily sense that fate was ambushing her. Lu Yin took the bead. Why did you come to the origin space? Are you hurt? Wei Nu's expression was ugly. She did not want to come to the origin space either. It was all because of that sword. 2 years ago she was suddenly injured by a sword. She couldn't see the origin of the sword, but she knew what it was. It was a sword of karma. He had schemed against someone else and someone else had used karma to stab him with a sword. It was because of this sword that she was heavily injured. In order to avoid the sword edge that might appear later, she could only hide in the beginning space. Only the beginning space could avoid the sword of karma. But there was also a problem in the primordial space, and that was Lu Yin. This place was too close to Lu Yin. She wanted to heal herself, she might be discovered. In the end, she was discovered by Lu Yin. If you schemed against someone, you would eventually be schemed against. Wei Nu panted heavily. She couldn't heal herself in 2 years and she was no match for Lu Yin now. The grudge between you and Bai Xian'er has already been settled. Why are you still chasing after me? Lu Yin sized up Wei Nu. You're quite injured. Who could injure you like this? I'm asking you, why are you chasing after me? We're not enemies, Wei Nu said. Lu Yin put his hands behind his back. Bai Xian'er is a part of you. The source of the hatred for the Lu family is you, not her. At that time she wouldn't have banished the Lu family. Wei Nu laughed. So the Lu family's hatred made you target me? Lu Yin, the Tianyuan universe is facing a strong enemy, the spiritualized universe and the insect hive. You still want to increase the number of enemies. Although I'm injured, I'm not someone you can easily deal with. I've already said that we're not enemies. Lu Yin said, why did you lure me and the spiritualized universe's people into the mirage? Wei Nu said, didn't you always want to enter the mirage? Only in the mirage can the spiritualized universe's people not escape and be killed by you. I also belong to the Tianyuan universe and I don't want anything to happen to the Tianyuan universe. You're in the bitter adversity realm, right? That's right. Restarting the Tianyuan universe will only benefit you. The reason just now doesn't count. I control the Tianyuan universe, and if you don't give me a satisfactory answer, your ending won't be much better than eternity's. Wei Nu shook her head. It's lonely at the top. Back then Tai Hong and Mr. Mu were his companions. What about you? Who do you have? You've surpassed all of them. You've even surpassed the legends of the 3 realms and 6 paths. Who else can stand shoulder to shoulder with you? Lu Yin, don't treat everyone as an enemy. Otherwise your ending will be the same as eternity's. Lu Yin nodded. That's true, but there are also many people following me. I once thought that I was alone, but the further I walk on this path, the more people I have, including the ordinary people of the Tianyuan universe. They rely on me and are my companions. Currently, you are in the Tianyuan universe and you only have 2 sides. Be my enemy or be my friend. There are no other sides. Wei Nu frowned. We don't have any grudges, so why force me? Lu Yin did not mind. He had definitely been schemed against by Wei Nu during the mirage. This woman had always been scheming against him. Just treat it as me being overbearing. I don't wish for the Tianyuan universe to have anyone or anything outside of my control. You are quite overbearing, but I don't want to choose between the 2 sides. If you force me, we can only be enemies. Wei Nu's surroundings distorted as a gray color circulated. This was the power of time. The spiritualized universe's greatest disadvantage against the Tianyuan universe was the domain of time. Within the Tianyuan universe, everyone's greatest disadvantage against Wei Nu was also the domain of time. Even though Lu Yin could reverse 1 second and traverse the river of time to trace back to the past, he still could not defeat Wei Nu in the domain of time. Papercut's method was the symbol of her control over the river of time. The difference between Lu Yin and Wei Nu was obvious. One could only cross the river while the other could create it. The only one who could match Wei Nu in this aspect was fate. If possible, Lu Yin did not want to force Wei Nu too much. However, he had to obtain the clues that Wei Nu represented. Furthermore, this woman was hiding a plan that made him uneasy. When one's cultivation reached Lu Yin's level, especially when one dabbled in the domain of time, one would feel a sense of danger in the future. Every time Lu Yin saw Wei Nu, he would feel a sense of danger. If he had to choose between the one true god and Wei Nu, he would even hesitate, even though Wei Nu did not seem as threatening as the one true god. Along the way, Lu Yin had experienced many life and death situations. He trusted his intuition. Being an enemy or being a friend is not easy. Even if you choose to be my friend, you will not truly believe me. Lu Yin looked at Wei Nu. However, as long as you answer one of my questions, I will treat you as my friend and will not force you. Wei Nu narrowed her eyes. Her pretty face was so weak that it made one's heart ache. Speak. Lu Yin's expression was solemn. The real reason why you lured me to the Mirage domain. Wei Nu frowned. I told you to kill the spiritualized universe's people and the Eternals. Since you can find the Eternals and spiritualized universe's people, why bother going to the Mirage domain? Just tell me the location and it will be easier to kill them. No matter how attractive the Mirage domain is to the spiritualized universe, they will not die for it. Mr. Wei Nu, I do not wish to hear such a stupid answer a 3rd time. Wei Nu's eyes flashed. Why do you think? Lu Yin pondered for a moment. He suddenly stepped forward and pressed down on Wei Nu. Those who oppose me will not have a good ending. You will not be an exception. Wei Nu retreated. The river of time vaguely flowed as she headed towards it alone. Since Lu Yin could not get the answer he wanted from Wei Nu, he could only snatch it from her. He had imprisoned many high and mighty people, and he had killed many powerhouses that he had once looked up to. Wei Nu was just one of them. There was nothing that he could not do. Wei Nu entered the river of time alone. Her figure was illusory and she had no intention of fighting. A small boat of flowing light appeared around Lu Yin, and he flew out and entered the river of time. Wei Nu looked at the small boat and waved her hand, causing time to reverse. Even progenitors would be frightened by the power of time reversal and would not dare to come into contact with it. However, the small boat of flowing light floated above the river. No matter how much the river reversed, Lu Yin used tracing back to the past as a coordinate and swallowed the time that did not merge with the river of time to cross it. The two chased each other through the river of time, one in front and one behind. Wei Nu's face paled as this Lu Yin was too troublesome. No one dared to casually enter the river of time, but he did. If this person had just broken through to the progenitor realm and entered the river of time, he would not have been able to withstand it and would have been swept out by her. However, this person had learned tracing back to the past. Tracing back to the past could cut off the river of time and stabilize the mirage domain. Even Wei Nu was afraid of that power. This person was Mr. Mu's disciple, and he was rather troublesome in the domain of time. Since that was the case, she could only go to the mirage domain. Dao Master Lu, there are powerful enemies from the spiritualized universe in the hive. I can tell you that even more powerful enemies from the outside universe will appear in the future. They are things that you cannot imagine and should have appeared long ago. You should not chase after me, Wei Nu said. Lu Yin's body rose and fell along with the river of time. Tell me the real reason. Also, who injured you? His desire for clues grew closer and closer, and Wei Nu would definitely be able to give him an answer. Wei Nu looked back. Do you really want to fight to the death with me? I just want to know the answer, Lu Yin barked. Wei Nu's gaze turned cold and she instantly disappeared. She had entered the mirage domain. The moment she entered, Lu Yin also saw the shore of the mirage domain and hurriedly entered. Chapter 3390. At the entrance of the Forbidden Zone, Ancestor Ku turned to look at the river of time and saw Wei Nu passing by. He reached out to stop her, but Wei Nu's face changed into Zhao Ran's. Ancestor Ku's pupils shrank. Zhao Ran? Wei Nu rushed into the Forbidden Zone while he was still in a daze. The next moment, Lu Yin walked out and saw Wei Nu rushing to the entrance of the Forbidden Zone. He sighed, but it was still too late. Ancestor Ku regained his senses. Who was that? Wei Nu, Lu Yin said. Ancestor Ku was shocked. Wei Nu? Zhao Ran? Lu Yin nodded and sighed. She's Wei Nu, but she's also Zhao Ran. Ancestor Ku looked at the Forbidden Zone with a complicated expression. Zhao Ran had been with him for many years. He was born ugly, but he walked step by step with a strong will. Outsiders thought that he was invincible, but he also needed peace in his heart. Zhao Ran accompanied him when he was weak. During those years he was the only one in Zhao Ran's world and she was the only one in his world. There was no love between them, nor was there any kinship. They were more like two confused fledglings snuggling together, heart to heart. As his cultivation increased, he knew that he was not the one Zhao Ran was waiting for. Then a great war broke out. He rushed into the Eternals to fight for the survival of the human race and parted with Zhao Ran. The next thing he saw was the above sky sect. However, Ancestor Ku did not say anything to Zhao Ran. The past was the past and Lu Yin was the one Zhao Ran was waiting for. Although the past had dissipated, suddenly seeing Zhao Ran again, that familiar feeling still made him hesitate. I'm sorry. Lu Yin shook his head. Wei Nu is good at manipulating people. Senior, you might be one of her schemes. There's nothing to be sorry about. By the way, did the president come out? Ancestor Ku said. No, he hasn't come out since he entered. Lu Yin and Ancestor Ku stood at the entrance of the Forbidden Zone and looked inside. Lu Yin really wanted to go in and look for him, but his rationality did not allow him to be impulsive. Even the primogenitor was afraid of this Forbidden Zone and warned the Three Realms Six Paths not to go in. Although he was stronger than the Three Realms Six Paths, he was not as strong as the primogenitor. Could he only wait? Now that Wei Nu was here, Ancestor Ku could not protect her alone, but once he left the mirage he would only have one chance to enter. Lu Yin pondered for a moment and decided to bring people into the mirage domain when he returned. He wanted to make use of the resources that the Tianyuan universe had gathered. Just as Lu Yin was about to leave, ripples spread out and space distorted. The Forbidden Zone expanded, enveloping both Lu Yin and the desolate ancestor. In the blink of an eye, everything began to spin, and when he looked around he couldn't see the river of time, nor could he see the bamboo forest or the log cabin. All he could see were grotesquely shaped trees, all of which bore fruit that resembled Lu Yin. Lu Yin looked around. What was going on? Did Wei Nu expand the forbidden area? Did she have the ability to do so? Before he could think further, a familiar voice came from behind him. You're awake too. It's not too late. Forget it. Since you're awake, eat it. Lu Yin turned around and saw a giant looking up at him. This giant was Lu Yin. Lu Yin was stunned. Himself. Everyone who wakes up looks at me like this. This karma is the best fit for my former self. Unfortunately, the path to immortality is heartless. Between the universe and my former self, I have to give up on one. If I eat you, I will soon reach the Great Circle. The giant's gaze was unfamiliar to Lu Yin. It was a kind of indifference, or rather, a numbness to the outside world. Why do I have such a gaze? Wait, what am I now? What did I eat? Lu Yin looked down and realized that he was no longer a human but a fruit. Like the fruits around him, he was just an awakened fruit. Karma? Self? Path to immortality? The giant raised his hand and grabbed at Lu Yin. Lu Yin's fruit was on a branch and was relatively tall, but the giant could still reach it. The giant hand was getting closer and closer. What was going on? What was happening? With his strength, he had unknowingly become a fruit? Was this the forbidden zone? Darkness enveloped him and the giant hand was about to grab him. Lu Yin gritted his teeth, unwilling to accept this. This giant wasn't him and he didn't want to be eaten. No matter what, he couldn't be eaten. He was Lu Yin, the Tao master of the above heaven sect, the master of the Tianyuan universe. He surpassed the 3 realms and 6 Daos and was close to the primogeniture. He was one of the strongest people in this universe, so how could he be eaten? The heavenly Tao's bestowal, swallowing and spitting rivers, the ancient earth's harmony, imitating the high sages, the heavenly Tao's rejection, condensing qi, leaping through the starry sky to lie down, communicating with people, swallowing and spitting rivers, leaping through the vast expanse to lie down. Lu Yin recited the primogenitor's scripture, and the giant hand in front of him became illusory. The primogenitor's scripture? I know it too and you can't avoid it. On the path of karma, you and I are just one of many. Lu Yin's pupils shrank, and he growled as he released the starry sky from his heart. At the same time, he released his consciousness from his consciousness planet. His consciousness was as firm as a boulder. This was all an illusion. Suddenly, a beautiful dance from the Luotian appeared. A smile bloomed in front of him as she looked at him in a daze. Brother Lu. The hand suddenly shattered and everything in front of Lu Yin's eyes and around him started to shatter, including his own body. This was just a fruit and it was so fragile. Heaven and earth flipped and the forbidden area dispersed. Lu Yin hurriedly tore through the void and returned to the above heaven sect. The scene just now had left him horrified. The feeling of being eaten by himself had been so real, and the Luotian's final smile had been filled with infatuation. Lu Yin didn't know how to face it. At this moment he didn't even know what he was thinking. He just wanted to leave the forbidden area as quickly as possible. As soon as he returned to the above heaven sect, insects swarmed over from all directions, covering the entire sky. In the distance, Yen Gang sneered, Lu Yin, I'll return the fear and despair you brought to me tenfold today. Lu Yin was stunned. Yen Gang? Wasn't he dead? With a boom, the above heaven sect shattered and the hellworm was torn apart. The Azure King was drenched in blood as he stepped on a shattered turtle shell from the ancestral turtle. Behind him, the strength beast's giant head floated, along with the corpses of Su Wang, Wood God, Wu Tian, Hongyan Mavis and the others. When he saw this, Lu Yin knew that he hadn't left the forbidden area. But this was too real. He had ignored Meng Sang's dream, but this was even more realistic than a dream. Even though he knew it was fake, Lu Yin couldn't control himself. He was like an outsider watching his own body madly attack the Azure King, being suppressed by the Azure King's 3 ultimate techniques. He watched as he was injured and charged out again and again, attacking crazily, but he couldn't change the outcome. At this moment, Lu Yin was like an outsider. When the above heaven sect shattered, a person appeared in front of Zhou Ran. It was the Destiny Daughter. Choose again. You are my future daughter. The shower head fell from Zhou Ran's hand with a soft sound. She looked at the Destiny Daughter in confusion. You're not dead. The Destiny Daughter smiled. I should have died at your hands. Me. You. The confusion in Zhou Ran's eyes suddenly disappeared, replaced by a deep gaze filled with indifference and coldness. Destiny, since you ambushed me, the tributary must return to the mainstream. As soon as she finished speaking, everything seemed to rewind as if time was flowing in reverse. At this moment, no matter how strong the Azure King was, everything was rewinding. In just an instant, Lu Yin's body trembled, and when he looked again, he saw a wedding taking place in San Dios. He was actually back here. At this moment, Lu Yin was real. He looked at his hands, himself, and controlled himself. He was no longer a third party. Why are you here? Jenny Anna stared at Lu Yin in disbelief. Baser walked out and glared at Lu Yin. Student Lu, you're not invited to this wedding. Leave. Lu Yin didn't speak and just looked around. He saw Jenny Anna and Yen Gang. The moment he saw Yen Gang, boundless killing intent rose in his heart. This was the person who had used the insectoid nest to nurture the Azure King, who had then slaughtered the Above Heaven sect. So that was how it was. This was a cycle of karma that had given him a chance. Everything seemed so logical. He originally had a chance to choose again, but the cycle of karma had brought this chance forward to 100 years ago, to that wedding in San Dios. It was that wedding that had started the destruction of Fire's Melt planet, and it was here that he had dealt with Yen Feng and Yen Gang. Now this cycle of karma had given him a chance to choose again. Would he destroy this wedding or would he fight to the death with Fire's Melt planet? Lu Yin stared at Yen Gang. Was this the karma that had been given to him? Baser, Yen Feng and the rest followed Lu Yin's gaze and saw Yen Gang. Lu Yin should be paying attention to Yen Feng and Jenny Anna. But why was he staring at Yen Gang? Yen Gang was stunned as well. Why are you staring at me? I'm just a nobody, a follower. He would never have dreamed that everyone's attention would be focused on him at a time like this. Karma and karma. There was only one path to take, and if one chose karma, there would be karma. This wedding was a trap that Yen Feng had set for Lu Yin. It didn't seem like a big deal, but at the time, Lu Yin had an engagement with the Anna family. If he had allowed Yen Feng and Jenny Anna to be together, he would have been ridiculed. It didn't seem like a big deal in the short term, but as time passed, he would have to pay a huge price. Who would want to follow a man who didn't even dare to steal his own woman? Lu Yin's current glory was built on his numerous battles, and he was seen as a legend by countless people in the Tianyuan universe. If there was such a blemish, his future would change. Besides, this wedding had already been watched by many people. His choice would definitely change the future. Did he really have to choose again? If he couldn't see through this karma, then he would. The Forbidden Zone was very powerful and he couldn't see through it right away. However, he was still one of the strongest in the Tianyuan universe. If the primogenitor could leave the Forbidden Zone, then so could he. The Forbidden Zone couldn't completely change his thinking. Lu Yin knew that this was a karma within the Forbidden Zone that had nothing to do with the outside world. How could the Above Heaven sect have been destroyed by the Azure King? Yen Gang and the Azure King were both dead. But since he had to choose again, then he might as well choose again and see what this karma was. Chapter 3391. Wei Nu wanted to use the Forbidden Zone to deal with him, and he wanted to see what would happen here. He made the same choice again. Lu Yin made the same choice as before, wanting to see if it would bring about the same results. As Yen Feng and Baser fell, time around Lu Yin sped up, just like what had happened to him in the past. Lu Yin watched himself go through the Sovereign Tournament, the battle with the 4 Libras, the 6 Directions Association, the battle at Immemorial City, the battle with the Spiritualized Universe, and finally, Wei Nu brought him into the Mirage Domain and the Forbidden Zone. Lu Yin opened his eyes and looked around. There were still trees and fruits that looked like him. He hurriedly looked at himself and relaxed. He wasn't a fruit. But if he wasn't a fruit, then was he the giant Lu Yin? Wasn't he the giant Lu Yin to those fruits? Was he Lu Yin or the giant Lu Yin? Lu Yin was confused. He couldn't see clearly as the fog of time enveloped him. A figure walked out of the fog. Lu Yin's gaze froze. Was it the president or Wei Nu? There wasn't just one figure. 4 people had entered the Forbidden Zone. Himself, the desolate ancestor, the president, and Wei Nu. 2 figures had appeared at the same time, so there had to be enemies. Lu Yin stared ahead, ready to act at any moment. When the figures walked out of the fog, his expression changed. How could it be them? It was Jenny Anna and Yen Gang who appeared in front of him. Lu Yin stared blankly. How could it be them? Yen Gang was definitely dead, and Lu Yin hadn't paid any attention to Jenny Anna. She was either dead or on Xenu Star, so why was she here? Lu Yin approached the 2. Their eyes were dazed and they walked like puppets as they approached Lu Yin. Lu Yin frowned and walked off in a different direction. The rest of the group followed him in the same direction. Their eyes were filled with confusion and they stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin didn't move and so did they. Lu Yin looked at the two. Was this his own karma? He didn't care about Yen Gang. An enemy was an enemy and Lu Yin didn't regret it. However, he had once felt guilty towards Jenny Anna. Everyone was born with freedom and Jenny Anna had never liked him. It was only because the Anna family needed her that she was forced to marry him. It was unfair to her and she had resisted. She liked Yen Feng. She married Yen Feng because she wanted to marry someone she liked. She didn't want to scheme against her. Fire's Melt planet had been destroyed and Yen Feng had died. She had been imprisoned by the Anna family and abandoned by many of Lu Yin's supporters. From the beginning to the end, this woman only wanted her own love. He didn't regret ruining that wedding as he wanted to fight for himself. He didn't regret it then and he still didn't regret it now. The only thing that had affected him was Jenny Anna. Jenny Anna was born into the Anna family and received the resources and protection of the Anna family. She had also acted willfully and recklessly in the past. This was her cause, so she had to bear the consequences of the Anna family's actions. There was no exception. He had already discussed this with Jenny Anna and asked the Anna family not to make things difficult for her. He had no idea what had happened to this woman. Jenny Anna and Yen Gang were his fruits. Were they following him now or had they always been there? Was it just that he couldn't see them? Lu Yin stared at the two in a daze. Were they following him now or could they not see him? This was very important. He slowly approached the two. They seemed to maintain a certain distance from him, and as long as he didn't cross that distance they wouldn't move. Lu Yin walked up to them and raised his hand to touch Jenny Anna. In an instant the world spun once more and Lu Yin returned to San Dios where he stared straight ahead. Why are you here? Jenny Anna stared at Lu Yin in disbelief. Baser walked out and glared at Lu Yin. Student Lu, you're not invited to this wedding. Leave. Lu Yin looked around amused. Karma. So these two were his karma and he had to touch them. In that case he should try a different option this time. He obediently left. Yen Feng, Baser, Jenny Anna and the rest were all shocked. He left just like that. Countless people who saw this scene could not believe their eyes. Lu Yin had ruined the wedding in such a high-profile manner, and he had left just like that. Lu Yin left and time began to pass. After he left, the wedding went on as usual. Jenny Anna happily married Yen Feng and Yen Feng ascended to the top. However, no matter how glorious he was, that was only in the outerverse and he was still far from the level of the 10 arbiters. The only one who could truly replace Lu Yin was Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu possessed absolute power and terrifying schemes. Lu Yin had once died and Night King Zhenwu had been known as the leader of the 10 arbiters. He had been expected to participate in the contest for the Star Tower in the Neoverse, and even Starsibyl had been his subordinate at that time. This time, Lu Yin had chosen not to show off his abilities. The future had changed and he had lost a lot of support and opportunities. To others such changes did not exist. Night King Zhenwu successfully became the leader of the 10 arbiters and defeated the other 10 arbiters. Starsibyl had dressed him in robes, and he had continued to make breakthroughs in the Star Tower battles. He had become one of the 5 children of the stars, and he had headed to the Astral Tree domain. There he had helped the Day-Night clan break free from the cold Immortal sect's control and return to the 5th mainland to unify it. Time continued to pass. Aside from his absolute power and innate gift, Night King Zhenwu's schemes were also terrifying. Even though the Day-Night clan had once been servants of the cold Immortal sect, they had gradually risen to a position comparable to the 4 cardinal scales under his leadership. They had led the 5th mainland to compete for the Astral Tree domain and participated in the battle on the back of the Astral Tree domain. In the end they had won the recognition of the 4 cardinal scales and become the 5th cardinal scale. They had bent down to contact the 6-way society and replaced the 3 sovereigns spacetime. They had opened up the 3 sovereigns spacetime and lured the Eternals into a trap. They had forced the 6-way society to fight the Eternals, causing both the 6-way society and the Eternals' first zone of disaster to suffer heavy losses. Night King Zhenwu had taken advantage of the situation to rise up and establish the Arbiters sect. One by one, even though the paths taken were different, the results were similar. The Arbiter, the sect, the Eternals' first zone of disaster. Whatever Lu Yin had done in the past, Night King Zhenwu could do the same with his strength and methods. He was like the sun in the sky, known as the master of the sect above. Even though he was not respected by the primordial space because he did not have a bottom line, he did not need to be respected. He only recognized his own strength. He had survived numerous life and death crises. No one knew how many times the Fireplume race had died in his place. He would always stand up again. Compared to Lu Yin, his scheming personality made Xianxia and the other guardians feel less threatened. The more shameless a person was, the less of a threat they were. The guardian of the four directions could not be used, and the threat of the spiritualized universe had not come for the time being. Some people were still alive and some were dead. The abandoned path, Calamity, Crusade, Yi Ro, and the others had also gathered at the Above Heaven sect for various reasons. This was karma, and even if Lu Yin wasn't around, the situation would still develop in the same way. In the eyes of the universe, what was a good person? What is a bad person? It was just a cycle of karma. Lu Yin walked forward. He had people he cared about, people who supported him. Night King Zhenwu also walked forward. He also had people he cared about and people who supported him. Lu Yin returned to the forbidden area once more. This time Night King Zhenwu walked out of the fog of time. His gaze was not dazed but rather profound as he looked at Lu Yin. "You made the right choice," Night King Zhenwu said. Lu Yin met his gaze. "Let you take the position? At the very least, the Tianyuan universe will not face such a great crisis." Night King Zhenwu clasped his hands behind his back, just like when he had ascended to the position of master of the Above Heaven sect. Lu Yin calmly replied, "The crisis won't disappear just because it won't come. The Tianyuan universe will have plenty of time to develop under my leadership. But you have no bottom line. Are you really protecting the Tianyuan universe? How many people are born every day? How many people die? This is just a cycle. Haven't you seen through it yet? This is the cycle of karma." Night King Zhenwu was confident. "You can change the history of the Tianyuan universe and this cycle can also appear. Those ordinary people also have their own cycle of karma. If one person causes the death of another, then that person will eventually be harmed by the karma brought about by the other person. No one can escape the cycle of karma." Lu Yin stared at Night King Zhenwu. "What about you? Without a bottom line, how many people have you caused to die? What kind of karma will you bear?" "It's the same for you. Many people have died because of you. Otherwise, why would you be talking to me?" Night King Zhenwu asked. Lu Yin laughed. "I want to see through karma." Night King Zhenwu proudly replied, "Karma is to let you see clearly that I am the one who can stand at the peak of the Tianyuan universe. Didn't you boast about protecting those ordinary people? Because of you, too many dangers have erupted in the Tianyuan universe. How long can those ordinary people live? I'm different. I can allow the Tianyuan universe to exist for countless more years. Generation after generation. The result will still be the same," Lu Yin retorted. Night King Zhenwu shouted, "At least they won't die. Who was the first to be deified by you? Nongyi, he's dead. Who went to the dark space-time to look for you? Who fought alongside you against Emoshang? Danjing is dead. Who supported you the most? Lingqing is dead. Who was the most selfless to you? Even the ancestral realm exists for you? Elder Chan is dead. Who taught you? The crazy headmaster who helped you rise from nothing is dead. Lu Yin, these people died because of you. They died because you were too much of a threat. You didn't know how to hide your strength and bide your time. You showed off your abilities and you protected your bottom line. But it was precisely because of these bottom lines that these people died. Can you face them?" Lu Yin closed his eyes and familiar faces flashed past his mind. At this moment he suddenly felt tired. Very tired, so tired that he wanted to sleep. "The Lu family will return and I will resolve the conflict between the Lu family and the four cardinal scales. At that time you will still be Lu Xiaoxian. Isn't it good for you to live your life happily? Why let so many people die for you?" Night King Zhenwu shouted. Lu Yin opened his eyes and looked at Night King Zhenwu. "Then go ahead and do it. I want to see what kind of consequences there will be for your actions." Night King Zhenwu disappeared. Chapter 3392. Lu Yin once again saw the karma as well as the passage of time. When the Lu family returned, the four-way Libras and the Lu family would not rest until one of them was dead. In the end, Night King Zhenwu chose to help the four-way Libras and destroy the Lu family. Immemorial City was also destroyed and the primogenitor and Mr. Mu both died. Night King Zhenwu chose to join the spiritualized universe, and because of his contributions and innate gift, he was hailed as the next Yusang Tian. He had led a group of people to the spiritualized universe alive. Among them were the four scales, those who supported him, and even the Fire's Melt planet. He also had people he cared about. But what he cared about wasn't what Lu Yin cared about. The heavenly Tao's bestowal, swallowing and spitting out 100 rivers, the ancient land's harmony, imitating the high sage. The heavenly Tao's refusal, the Qi's induction. Leaping through the starry sky to lie down. Being good at communicating with people. Swallowing and spitting out 100 rivers. Leaping through the vast expanse to lie down. His consciousness was as steady as a rock. Lu Yin instantly returned to San Dios. His choice had not been wrong. Whether it was the cause or effect, since he was the one who had done it, he should bear the consequences. Lu Yin could almost hear Night King Zhenwu's unwilling roar. I just made a choice, but you can't walk out of it. This time Night King Zhenwu walked out of the fog once again. The only difference was that this time Night King Zhenwu's eyes were dazed, just like Jenny Anna and Yen Gang's. This Night King Zhenwu was not the real Night King Zhenwu, as it was just a strand of Lu Yin's own karmic imagination. Could be Night King Zhenwu, Lu Xiaogo, or even Silver. Could be anyone. Could karma be changed? If Night King Zhenwu had come to the Mirage Domain during Lu Yin's second choice, would Night King Zhenwu really replace him? Would the outside world really change? Who wrote down the laws of the universe? If karma existed, would it replace karma? Everything was like a dream. Whose karma did his existence replace? Lu Yin stood in place and pondered for a long time, forgetting the passing of time. After an unknown amount of time, the fog around him dissipated. Lu Yin walked in a certain direction and saw the desolate ancestor's corpse. The desolate ancestor wasn't dead, but he was sitting cross-legged in the same state as Lu Yin had been. Lu Yin did not dare to disturb him. Karma was an interrogation of one's soul. It was one's understanding of the universe. Once one couldn't figure it out, it would be easy to go berserk. In fact, even he couldn't tell if he was real or an illusion. He walked in a different direction. The time fog didn't affect him at all, but it was as if he had a passive choice. Wherever the fog dissipated, he would go. This time he saw the round-faced old man from the headquarters. It wasn't just the president himself, but rather a group of people surrounding him. There were humans and creatures of other forms, but Lu Yin knew that all of those surrounding him were his karma. The main guild leader just stood there motionlessly with his eyes closed. This seemed to be the only way to interrogate himself. Was he experiencing a choice? Lu Yin approached him and reached out to touch one of the figures. The president's eyes widened as he stared at Lu Yin in shock. I don't want to start over. You, I didn't kill you, I had no choice, you go find them, Choose again? How should I choose? If I don't help them, they will deal with me. I have no choice. If there is only one choice in karma, why should I choose again? I've had enough. The president's figure was illusory and Lu Yin stared at him. He was changing. He had made a new choice. The president's figure gradually blurred and was replaced by another figure. There would always be a figure here who would lead the spiritualized cultivators to invade the Tianyuan universe and fight with Lu Yin's group. They would then be lured into the Mirage Domain and brought to this forbidden area. This process would not change only the person. The president had changed, but to the Tianyuan universe and Lu Yin nothing had changed. Lu Yin casually waved his hand and his palm swept past the other figures. The figure that had replaced the president suddenly vanished and the president reappeared. No matter what he chose, the choice of karma would affect the karma of others. If he decided on those karma beforehand, it would be the same as deciding the karma of the past. Golden light bloomed and the president suddenly attacked in front of Lu Yin, catching him off guard. Lu Yin hurriedly dodged, but by the time he came back to his senses, the president was already gone. The figures around him had also vanished. Lu Yin sighed. He had been so focused on karma that he had forgotten about him. Lu Yin looked around. Karma. Cultivation was a line, time was a line, and karma was a line. These lines were all the same, and this was a law of the universe. How a person cultivated and what realm they reached were all predetermined. Even if the person changed, karma would not change. Where did this line begin? Who held it? Lu Yin slowly sat down. Since he was already here, he would take a look at karma and see if he could see through it. He had once thought that karma was the path to eternal life. Since he had already embarked on this path, he would continue down it. Let me see how this karma will continue. Around him, the trees were still the same and they were filled with fruits. They were still the same as Lu Yin's. It was as if as long as he was in this forbidden area, These trees and fruits would follow him wherever he went. It was just like the karma of Night King Zhenwu, Jenny Anna and Yen Gang. Lu Yin closed his eyes and recalled the past, searching for karma that could be changed. He found the pirate port. If the pirate port had not been attacked and he had not been severely injured, he would not have been tossed to Drift Charge Planet like a living corpse. He would not have met Luoxia, and he would not have been able to recite the Stonewall scriptures in those numbers. Then what would the future hold? Lu Yin had chosen not to go to the pirate port. Zhou Xian had died and her injuries could only be healed if he met Xianxia there. If he did not go to the pirate port, he would only be able to watch Zhou Xian die while he safely returned to Astral 10. Since he had not experienced life and death and he had not gone to Drift Charge Planet to cultivate the arcane art of life and death, Lu Yin's power was only average and he could not shine in the astral combat tournament. No matter how hard he worked, some people would never surpass him and they would always be replaced by Night King Zhenwu. Night King Zhenwu was too dazzling and the head of the 10 arbiters seemed to be the same. Lu Yin recited the primogenitor's scripture and opened his eyes to look at Night King Zhenwu. No matter how he changed his choices in the 5th mainland, unless he walked up to the top himself, the person who would replace him would always be this person. Ever since Lu Yin had started cultivating, only Night King Zhenwu had been able to bring him several life-threatening situations and even kill him. Night King Zhenwu was not only powerful, but he was also scheming and meticulous. If not for Lu Yin's good luck, he would have died long ago. Night King Zhenwu was indeed qualified to replace Lu Yin, but this person could only reach the astral tree realm. After that, it would be a karmic illusion. That was if he did not go to the pirate port, but what if he did not recite the primogenitor's scripture? Karma. Lu Yin had to constantly experience karma and grasp the threads of karma in order to walk this path. Intense pain spread throughout Lu Yin's body. He looked in front of him. This was Drift Charge Planet. Luoxia. It had been a long time. He had not known that this old man was one of the Kuei Luos, Luoxia, who had escaped from the astral tree realm with the Lu family's primogenitor's scripture and numbers. Memorize it. Lu Yin stared blankly at Luoxia. Actually, he had another choice, which was to reveal his identity to Luoxia. I told you to memorize it, Luoxia barked as he glared at Lu Yin. A foul stench assaulted Lu Yin's nostrils. It was the stench of white meat. Kid, if you don't memorize it, I'll eat you. Lu Yin slowly said, Luoxia. Luoxia's body trembled and he stared at Lu Yin in shock. What did you call me? Lu Yin looked at Luoxia. I'm Zhou Xian. Luoxia stared at Lu Yin in a daze and his trembling hands helped Lu Yin up. He scrutinized Lu Yin's face and his eyes reddened. You look like the young master. You're really the young master? Lu Yin sighed. It's hard to believe. Luoxia suddenly twisted Lu Yin's neck forcefully and tore Lu Yin apart as if he had gone mad. Impersonating the young master, the 4 directions scales. You finally found me. I'm not afraid. Then time passed and Lu Yin died on Drift Charge Planet. Everything in the 5th mainland continued on its path, and Night King Zhenwu rose to power, repeating what he had seen through karma. In the Mirage Realm's forbidden area, Lu Yin opened his eyes. Sure enough, this choice's outcome was within his expectations, and Luoxia would not believe it. He had only wanted to die once during this choice and see what kind of effect it would have on karma and the flow of time. The result was the same as when he had first seen the destruction of the Above Heaven sect. He had become a third party watching the 5th mainland's development. It was as if he had become the embodiment of karma. That's right. Lu Yin looked at his hands. Wasn't this karma that he had chosen again and again? Wasn't this karma? When he chose again, he had taken control of karma, but he could not see the karma's future. Only I am absent and I am replaced by benefits. Only I am transformed and I am replaced by no longer existing. This was the karma that he had seen so far. These 2 sentences suddenly appeared in Lu Yin's mind, and they represented his current understanding of karma. He looked around and saw that the fruits of his appearance had increased. If he continued, he would comprehend even more karma and one day he would be able to grasp the threads of karma. At this moment, Lu Yin seemed to have forgotten about the outside world. He had forgotten that he needed to find the president and his daughter, and he had even forgotten that he wanted to leave the forbidden area. This time he had chosen not to participate in the Star Tower struggle. He had defeated Night King Zhenwu and stomped him to death. One by one the 10 arbiters had walked out and Starsabil had stood behind him, draping his clothes over him. He had become the strongest youth in the innerverse and outerverse. From now on, you will replace Zhenwu and join the ranks of the Universe Youth Council, which is commonly known as the 10 Arbiters Council. First you defeated Lan Si, then you destroyed Zhenwu. Brother, you're ruthless. If you're a man, then drink it. Joining the 10 Arbiters Council means that you have to fulfill your obligations. The first thing you have to do is work together to deal with that group from the Neoverse. This was Lu Yin's first meeting with the 10 Arbiters after becoming one of them, and it was on Night King Planet. Lu Yin looked around. I refuse. Lu Tianmu and the others were stunned. What did you say? Lu Yin repeated, I refuse to participate in the Star Tower struggle. Do as you please. He then left, leaving behind the other 10 arbiters with confused expressions. Chapter 3393. No one would have thought that Lu Yin would refuse to participate in the Star Tower contest in the Neoverse. Lu Yin had assumed that if he did not participate in the Star Tower battle in the Neoverse, he would not be captured by the Eternals and would not be able to comprehend death energy in the depths of the Eternal Kingdom. In the end, however, the Eternals had captured him and imprisoned him beneath the Eternals. Lu Yin had defeated Night King Zhenwu and become one of the 10 arbiters. His innate gift could not be ignored, and the Eternals would not forget about him. To be more precise, the Eternals had been eyeing him for a long time. Otherwise, Bai Wuxian would not have tried his best to secretly alter Ming Yan's consciousness in an attempt to have her betray Lu Yin and lead him to the Eternals. The karma of this choice still existed. Even though there was no Star Tower battle, the result returned to normal in the Eternal Kingdom. In the forbidden land of the Mirage, another fruit that resembled Lu Yin had appeared. Lu Yin continued to choose karma. This time he had sealed off Shenwu continent and prevented Wu Junshi from coming over, which meant that she would not be able to understand the space-time continuum of the three sovereigns. This caused Lu Yin's curiosity towards the Sixth Direction Society to decrease significantly. However, even after Zijing had been found, the results had not changed. Lu Yin continued to make choices as he continued to locate karma. Karma was a very mysterious existence. It had its own laws. If Lu Yin had changed his mind earlier, then Night King Zhenwu could have filled in the gaps and allowed the universe to continue on its path of karma. Even if Night King Zhenwu had betrayed the Tianyuan universe, he had still taken away a group of people who he cared about and who had supported him. Thus, a group of people from the Tianyuan universe had survived. But in the later stages, when Lu Yin defeated Night Queen Zhenwu, he would have to bear the karma himself. He tried again and again, but the result was the same. All of these attempts made Lu Yin see a terrifying outcome. The Tianyuan universe would be defeated. Lu Yin looked at the increasing number of people in front of him, especially Night King Zhenwu. Would the Tianyuan universe be defeated? Night King Zhenwu had replaced Lu Yin, and he had acted according to karma. In the end, he had betrayed the Tianyuan universe and the Tianyuan universe had been rebooted. Night King Zhenwu had become Yusang Tian, but that was only from Lu Yin's perspective. If Night King Zhenwu saw it from Lu Yin's perspective, then Lu Yin's actions had also replaced Yusang Tian's karma. No matter who replaced who, the Tianyuan universe would still be defeated. Lu Yin clenched his fists as he did not want to accept this reality. They had worked very hard and thought of all sorts of ways to deal with the spiritualized universe, but in the future of karma, the Tianyuan universe would still be defeated. It would be a complete defeat, and even the survivors of the Tianyuan universe would be considered traitors. Why did this happen? Who set the cause and effect? Lu Yin did not want to believe in this karma, but through it he was very clear that he could see the future outcome. He had to grasp the path of karma. If the future couldn't escape karma, then he would change karma. He didn't know who had set up karma, but he couldn't accept this result. Lu Yin did not know how much time had passed, but he continued to make new choices. There were early and late stages, and the dividing line was Night King Zhenwu. He wanted to see if there was a different karmic future. The outcome had never changed. Night King Zhenwu would definitely lead the Tianyuan universe to failure in the future, and the Tianyuan universe would be rebooted. Wasn't this the karmic future that Lu Yin would have to face? Lu Yin tried again and again, hoping to see a different future, but he was disappointed time and time again. Too much disappointment led to despair. He didn't know how many times he had tried. He was already numb. He couldn't tell how many choices he had made and how many different paths he had walked. Until this time he saw Longxi. From now on, although you and I will not be husband and wife, we will be husband and wife in name. I'll lend you my strength and I won't let you down. In this life I Longxi will only be your wife. This was the second time Lu Yin had heard such words. Lu Yin looked at Longxi in front of him. At this moment he had disguised himself as Longqi and married Longxi. It was their wedding night. On this night Longxi had given her essence blood to him. After this night she would be his wife. At that time he had only thought of Ming Yan and hadn't cared about Longxi. He couldn't understand her despair at that time. She had loved Lu Xiaoxian deeply, but her heart had died the moment Lu Xiaoxian married by Xianxia. Lu Yin stared at Longxi. Her long blue hair looked dreamy and beautiful under the dim candlelight. Her eyes were filled with sorrow and despair. She would never marry anyone else in this life. At this moment Lu Yin's heart was filled with guilt. He had been too selfish and had never truly considered Longxi. He had only thought that she had treated him as a substitute for Lu Xiaoxian. Actually, both Lu Yin and Lu Xiaoxian were the most important people to Longxi. Lu Xiaoxian was her true love. Lu Yin was Longxi's husband. This could never be changed and Longxi had never thought of changing it. Longxi looked at Lu Yin and asked, "Do you know why I was willing to marry you?" Lu Yin exhaled slowly. The constant trials of karma had made him numb and tired. Looking at Longxi now he felt the warmth of home that he hadn't felt in a long time. This girl's love for him was no less than Luotian and Ming Yan's, but she had never mentioned it. Where was she now? What was she thinking about? The White Dragon clan had been destroyed. How lonely was she? Subconsciously Lu Yin hugged Longxi. A familiar fragrance filled the air, calming his restless heart. He would do everything he could to prevent the Tianyuan universe from being defeated. Karma. No matter how much karma there was, no matter how illusory it was, he would grasp it all. Let go. How dare you? Longxi shouted and fine draconic patterns appeared on her body. Her pupils were vertical and dragon horns appeared on her forehead. She broke free from Lu Yin's grasp and struck out with her palm. Her palm stopped in front of Lu Yin's forehead. Lu Yin looked at Longxi. Longxi's eyes were filled with anger and unspeakable grievances. She was already in despair. Tonight she would bid farewell to brother Xiaoxian, but she would protect her innocence for him. She didn't expect this person to take advantage of her. Lu Yin exhaled. "I'm back, Sister Xi." The anger in Longxi's eyes disappeared, and they were filled with shock and disbelief. She looked at Lu Yin blankly. What did you call me?" Lu Yin smiled and rubbed his nose. He pressed his hand on Longxi's head and scratched her dragon horn. "This is the White Dragon transformation. Interesting. Sister Xi, teach me. I'll teach you the Earth Treasury needles." Lu Xiaoxian had said this to Longxi when they first met. Lu Xiaoxian had only called her Sister Xi once. Later Longxi found it unpleasant and didn't allow him to call her that. He never called her that again. In this world only Lu Xiaoxian would call Longxi Sister Xi. This title belonged to Lu Xiaoxian. Lu Yin recovered Lu Xiaoxuan's memories and saw the past. Longxi's eyes were red as she looked at Lu Yin blankly. Her hand fell limply. "You are? Brother Xiaoxian?" Lu Yin wiped the corners of her eyes. "The four-way scales banished the Lu family and I was also struck down to the fifth mainland. Now that I've returned as Lu Yin, I'm going to take back everything that belongs to me. Not only me but also big sister, second brother, third brother, fourth brother, fifth brother and sixth sister. I know who the enemy of the Lu family is. I also know your pain. Sister Xi, this time I will make a new choice." Longxi's eyes narrowed as tears rolled down her cheeks. She squatted down and wept weakly. Lu Yin looked at the starry night sky and hugged Longxi. The two talked for a long time and they lost track of time. Lu Yin told her what he owed her during Lu Xiaoxuan's era. There were many things that Longxi did not understand, but she did not need to understand. She knew that this person was Brother Xiaoxian. That's right, her brother Xiaoxian had returned. "Brother Xiaoxian, I missed you." Longxi's face was flushed as she curled up in Lu Yin's arms. Her long blue hair was loose and her fragrance permeated the air. Lu Yin lowered his head and looked into Longxi's eyes, which were as bright as stars. Unknowingly, his worries about the future had been soothed. Countless attempts at karma had exhausted him physically and mentally, but at this moment he did not want to think about anything else. He let go of everything and at this moment he just wanted to go home. He slowly lowered his head and the warmth of her lips dispelled the cold wind. Her clothes were all removed and she was breathtakingly beautiful. Her blue and white colors complemented each other beautifully. This night's reselection did not change the future, but it did change the relationship between Lu Yin and Long Shi. Karma continued to move in the same direction. The ruler's realm had fought for the origin artifact, and Lu Yin had taken Long Shi into Mount Supreme and registered her in the White Dragon clan's genealogy. His identity had been exposed and he had fled Dragon Mountain. Nothing had changed except for Long Shi. He had captured her not because he had no choice, but because he wanted to protect her. Time continued to pass and Lu Yin took Long Shi away. She was pregnant and had given birth to a child. The moment he saw the child, Lu Yin felt something he had never experienced before. This attempt at karma was not something he wanted to wake up from. He did not want to leave this karmic choice. He could not bear to part with Long Shi and the child. They called this child Xiaoxiaoxuan and it was very cute. Lu Yin returned to the Mirage domain and looked around. He subconsciously looked for Long Shi and Xiaoxiaoxuan but they were all fake. They were all fake. This was just a single attempt at karma. The result was still determined. No matter what happened between him and Long Shi, it could not change the karma of the universe. He was anxious and desperate and he wanted to find his wife and child. That's right, the fruit. Lu Yin looked around and saw that there was another fruit. This fruit represented the karma that had just occurred. Lu Yin stared at it. He plucked it and ate it. He thought that this would allow him to enter karma again, or rather that the Long Shi and Xiaoxiaoxuan of that karma would appear. Had there been any changes? If there had not, then he would continue. Lu Yin ate the fruits one by one and he seemed to have returned to karma. This time he saw the karma of his dreams. He saw Long Shi disappear with Xiaoxiaoxuan in her arms. They were fated to be fake, just a choice of karma. Lu Yin tried to stop them like crazy, wanting to bring them back, but they still disappeared. Eternal life. Only eternal life could stop it. Only eternal life could see through karma. Lu Yin had never yearned for eternal life so much. He saw another fruit being born and this one opened its eyes to look at him. Lu Yin saw everything this fruit had experienced and felt pity. Everyone that wakes up looks at me like this. This karma is the most in line with my original heart. Unfortunately, the path of eternal life is ruthless. In front of the universe and my past self, I have to give up one. After eating you, I will reach perfection. Suddenly, Lu Yin stopped moving and stared blankly at the fruit. Was he the one who said that? Wasn't that what the giant Lu Yin had said when he had entered the Mirage domain? Chapter 3394. At that moment the world spun and countless voices rang out in his ears. He heard a voice from afar. The heavenly Tao's bestowal swallowing and spitting rivers. The ancient earth's harmony, imitating the high sages. The heavenly Tao's rejection condensing qi. Leaping through the starry sky to lie down. Communicating with people. Swallowing and spitting rivers. Leaping through the vast expanse to lie down. Primogenitor's scripture. Lu Yin punched the ground, causing his surroundings to tremble. When he opened his eyes again, he was still in the forbidden zone, and he was still surrounded by those trees. The fruits were still there. Night King Zhenwu and the others' shadows stood around him, which was his own karma. Beads of sweat dripped down Lu Yin's forehead. He had almost gone mad. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. He clutched his chest and sat down. Everything that had just happened was karma. He had constantly tried to test karma, but he had eventually lost himself within it. If not for the same words, he might never have been able to leave this forbidden zone, let alone grasp the threads of karma. He finally understood why the star toad had kept shouting great-grandmother and spitting out blood. This forbidden zone was terrifying. In the distance, a figure walked out from the fog of time. Lu Yin looked over and his body trembled. He spat out another mouthful of blood as a heart-wrenching pain assaulted him. It was Long Shi and she was holding Xiaoxiaoxuan in her arms. They had been chosen by karma, and they had finally appeared in front of Lu Yin. Lu Yin could not bear it and he spat out another mouthful of blood. He wanted to take Long Shi and Xiaoxiaoxuan away as they were his wife and child. They had accompanied him in the cycle of karma, but he could not capture them. Karma, karma. Lu Yin panted heavily as he looked at the ground with a bitter expression. If this was the path to eternal life, then he really could not continue down this path. Eternal life was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. This was why they had to restart the universe and enter eternal life. Even though it would cause the universe's life forms to be destroyed, it was the smallest and most selfish price they had to pay. Lu Yin clenched his fists as he had almost fallen to the same fate. Cultivation? What did he cultivate? What did he cultivate? Was it selfishness? No, it was not like that. The bottom line that he had always maintained was correct. Scenes repeated in front of him and Lu Yin spat out the words one by one. Reflect. Fear. Boulder. Ben. Only I am absent, I shall be replaced by benefits. Only I, the one who transforms, shall not exist. With a clear heart I am fearless of selfish desires. I am as firm as a rock. I am fearless of myself. I am the one who illuminates the heavens. Wheel of Karma, I look up to the heavens and see the endless wheel of life. I protect the return of life in the universe. As Lu Yin spat out each word, Yen Gang's silhouette transformed into a spiral that spiraled upwards. Jenny Anna, Night King Zhenwu and Long Shi also transformed into spirals as they circled around Lu Yin, connecting the heavens and the earth. Lu Yin's body spun around, going from slow to fast. His entire being was immersed in some sort of comprehension and his voice grew louder and louder. Outside the domain of annihilation, inside the forbidden lands, spirals entrenched themselves in the starry sky. The entire starry sky seemed to be connected by endless spirals. A pair of eyes opened from an unknown direction and looked at the mirage. How can this be? He had actually comprehended the Tao of Karma? Is it out of control? Archaic City, the primogenitor, and Mr. Mu were all shaken as they gazed at the boundless starry skies. This feeling? They couldn't tell what this feeling was, but it was both familiar and foreign to them. This is the kind of thing they should applaud. It was the feeling of holding, but he couldn't grasp it. It was as if the stars of the universe had come alive. The star toad stared blankly at the sky. How can this be? This feeling appeared again. Great-grandmother, don't come over, great-grandmother. Within the mirage, Wei Nu looked at the forbidden lands in shock. Impossible. He actually came into contact with karma? Impossible. He's not even in the primordial realm, so how can he come into contact with karma? What did he experience? What did he comprehend? Could it be real? Karma, eternal life. Is this path real? What he said is real. Oh, it's fake. It can't be real. This path will never work. It can't work. Wei Nu did not realize that a new branch had appeared in the river of time. This branch had not been intentionally created by fate's sneak attack. Instead, it had been taken away from the heaven's origin universe with Meng Sang's departure. With the appearance of this branch, cracks appeared in Mr. Mu's method of fixing the river of time. At the same time, with the appearance of this branch, the spiritualized universes in the endless distance sensed this scene. The spiritualized universe's experts were all shocked. They did not know what this feeling was, where it came from, or why. They did not know at all. They only knew that there was only one person who had given them this feeling before, Xianxia. Within the Supreme Heaven Palace, Xianxia opened his eyes. I can't wait any longer. With that, he took a step and vanished. Within the heaven's origin universe, within the mirage, Lu Yin's figure was basically invisible. He was spiraled upwards for an unknown amount of time before coming to a stop. He landed on the ground and opened his eyes. His gaze turned cold as he looked in a certain direction. He was being stared at. Sure enough, he was being stared at. He had not sensed it before, but he had just sensed it. It was a connection from karma. Someone was staring at him, so there was karma. Through karma he could come into contact with karma. Was that a blood-red sword? With a whoosh, the blood-red sword followed the karma. It flickered with cold light and the karma spiral was immediately severed. The next moment the feeling of being stared at vanished. Lu Yin raised his hand to grab the blood-red sword, but he stopped. This blood-red sword had not slashed at him, nor had it appeared in the mirage. Instead, it had slashed at the karma binding him from an unknown location, severing it. From now on he could no longer use this karma to find the person who was staring at him. However, he did not need to find that person. The blood-red sword belonged to that omnipotent existence. Was it Grandmaster Grass? The forbidden zone had completely changed in Lu Yin's eyes. Regardless of whether it was the karma that had followed him or the trees, they had all turned into karma spirals. These spirals gradually shrank in Lu Yin's eyes, but they truly existed. These karmic threads actually existed around everyone. They could be many or few, but almost no one could see them. There were countless threads of karma around Lu Yin. The longer one lived, the more karma there would be, and the greater one's influence, the more karma there would be. If Lu Yin wanted to see all of his karma, it would be enough to cover the entire sky. This was the ability that he had comprehended in the Forbidden Zone. He could see karma, and this was what he had created, the self-illuminating technique. The self-illuminating technique was the result of Lu Yin's repeated attempts at karmic reincarnation. In the end, he had almost sunk into karma under the stimulation of Long Shi and Xiaoxiaoxuan. He had almost sunk into karma, but it was not the karma that had caused him to sink, but rather that he did not want to come out. He did not want to leave his wife and children, but that was just a karmic reincarnation. The heart-wrenching pain made it difficult for Lu Yin to breathe. Emotions were the hallmark of intelligent creatures. The Eternals believed that emotions were the weakness of humans, but many times, it was precisely because of these emotions that a person could improve. Lu Yin had comprehended the self-illuminating technique because of these emotions, but he would rather not have this comprehension and would rather sink into karma forever. Lu Yin took a deep breath and stood in place. He closed his eyes for a moment before opening them again. It was difficult to describe what kind of gaze it was, but under this gaze, karma spiraled upwards and disappeared into the sky. Lu Yin was searching for karma. The one that had just been severed by the blood-red sword was the karma that he had been spied on. Lu Yin did not believe that the person who had been spying on him had done nothing but watch him. If that person had done something, then there would definitely be karma, and Lu Yin had to follow those karma to find clues. To that person, the karma created by spying on him would definitely be beneficial to that person, but it did not matter to Lu Yin. He could allow those karma to be severed and he could bear the loss. Karma appeared one after another and Lu Yin had to slowly sort them out. This was a huge project, but it could dilute the sorrow of the karmic reincarnation cycle. Days passed and the president continued to search for an exit in the forbidden area. More and more figures appeared around him and they were all his karma. He could not see through them nor could he escape from them. The desolate ancestor sat cross-legged, his body becoming more and more withered. No one knew what he was doing. Even Wei Nu, who had passed by earlier, could not see through him. The desolate ancestor was a shocking genius who had created the concept that things would move in the opposite direction when they reached an extreme. He was an existence that stood at the peak of his era. In the era of the above heaven, even if he had not been accepted as a disciple by the progenitor, he would have reached the level of the three realms 6 Daoists. Wei Nu had acknowledged the desolate ancestor, which was why Zhao Ran had approached him. The desolate ancestor had said that he was not the person that Zhao Ran was waiting for, but he could be considered the person that Zhao Ran was waiting for, or rather the person that Wei Nu was waiting for. This included the former progenitor Lu Tianyi and progenitor Qin, who had been in the same generation as the desolate ancestor. They were all people that Wei Nu was waiting for. No one could calculate the time in the Mirage domain and it was difficult to detect. The karmic reincarnation cycle's time was dispensable. On this day, Lu Yin suddenly stared at a strand of karma and found it. Was this the battle in the Mirage domain? The river of time flowed backwards and that small boat had come from Wei Nu. Yes, this was the reason why he had chased after Wei Nu. He had guessed correctly. The battle in the Mirage domain had been too strange, and Wei Nu must have been plotting something that they did not know about. And now, this strand of karma actually involved the blood-colored sword? The karmic spiral coiled around Lu Yin's fingertip and he flicked it lightly. Where there was cause, there was effect and he made the karmic spiral fly towards the forbidden area. If that did not work, then he would fly towards the entire Mirage domain. There had to be karma that intersected with it and he wanted to see what kind of karma this strand of karma had created. The karmic spiral flew towards the forbidden area, and at the same time, Wei Nu also entered the forbidden area. She wanted to see what Lu Yin had done. She could not see karma but she longed to see it. Right now she hoped that this path would not lead to eternal life. As soon as she entered the forbidden area, the strand of karma flew past her and pierced through her body, creating another strand of karma. Wei Nu felt as if she had been hit by an invisible attack. She was clearly not injured but she felt as if she had been pierced through. What was this feeling? At the same time, Lu Yin looked over and found it.